Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 233 tonight. It's Wednesday. It's cooled off a little bit here in Columbus, Ohio. A little humid, still a little humid. It is August. I got Nate Hale with me, as always. I'm Steve Crane. We got some guests in the garage. Not really offended, but, you know, Tyler Jones is here from Espinosa. Didn't want to be on the show, but, you know, it's fine. It's fine. No one's listening yet. Oh wait, no shit. They are. Well,
I'm probably one of them.
But no, he was just in town. He wanted to stop by, so we appreciate it. Always good to see him. And we got Sean. Maybe we'll get some other people in here. We'll see. But definitely share this if you guys are listening. Anywhere you're listening to it on the audio. If you're listening online live now with YouTube or Facebook, definitely share it if you'd like to get the conversation going a little bit more. I want to thank our sponsors, you guys at patreon.com/bourbon and BS podcast. The monthly contributions are a huge help, and we love seeing that support stay alive. You can also do a Venmo one-time contribution. We did have one last week, which was great, and that's at Bourbon and BS. If you guys want to do a one-time contribution, buy us a bottle. Just let us know what you want us to try to buy, and just, you know, get involved that way. We did have last week's guest, Tim Dodge from the Bourbon and BS community on Facebook, and he basically just stopped by the shop before he moved down south. And we've had people, obviously mail us stuff as well, but that's a way to do it. If you guys want to be on the show, we can see if we can line up schedules as well to do the same bottle and cigars with you as well, like we did with Tim last week. Also, buyjack.com/bourbon and BS. Did I say something?
No.
Okay. You looked at me judgingly. My peripheral. Buyjack.com/bourbon and BS for the shirts. I've got the podcast shirt on. Pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. I've got it in red. We've got a handful of colors. And then Nate's got one of the 3/4 sleeves for the BS Cigar Company. We have that in a handful of colors as well. I know we have this one, the black and gray. We have the black and red, black and blue. We have the black, white, and gold.
Yeah,
that's
four.
it.
Yep.
We had the gray and blue, but it didn't turn out all that well.
Yeah.
The black and red yesterday.
Black and red. Get a lot of compliments on those shirts. And Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. We have tonight for part one the Undercrown Sungrown from Drew Estate. We'll go over that a little bit here in part one, but we have that on because Tinder Box at Easton this week, tomorrow, in fact, has a Drew Estate event. Still a handful of tickets left at that event. It's 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. So if you're in the Columbus area, it's cigars and tequila. So you're going to have 2 Drew Estate cigars, 3 1-ounce pours of the 3 different, actually called 1, 2, 3 tequila. And that's going to be their Blanco, the Reposado, and their Añejo. And those bottles in Ohio are going between $50 and $75, I believe. So Not cheap bottles, not cheap pours. So hopefully you guys can take advantage of that. It's $35 only. If you're in the area and have not gotten a ticket yet, they still have, like I said, a handful of tickets. Call them right now before 9 p.m. Eastern time, or you can call tomorrow and reserve your spots. Hope to see you guys there. Altadis USA, we have the Monte Cristo Espada Oscuro for part 2. We always light up a second one in the part 2 there from Altadis USA, unless we have a special guest that we have a couple cigars from that company. And then the BS Cigar Company as well, the gold and silver, are available. Check them out at Tinder Box at Easton or get a hold of them, and they can ship some to you. All right. We're drinking tonight, thanks to Nate. What are we drinking tonight?
This is the I.W. Harper Cabernet Reserve, Cabernet Reserve Cask.
Is that right?
Cabernet Cask Reserve.
There we go.
There it is.
Scratch that, reverse it.
No, I picked this up a couple months ago, specifically for the podcast, because it is a newer bottle. This was just released in February of this year, so it's only been out for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the last 2 months of the podcast, we've had some guests that have either donated bottles or we were gifted bottles because of who we were going to have on through some of our contacts. So
we've had some great guests.
Yes.
Recently.
Yeah.
So now you're stuck with us.
Sorry about you.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So I bought this and I've been, just sitting on it waiting to do an episode with it. And so when you text me like, hey, what are we drinking tonight? And I was like, oh, I got a bottle.
Nice. Appreciate that.
Had a few in reserve.
Yeah.
This one, I still got a Whistle Pig 15. We got that 1792.
I thought we did that.
No, we didn't do Whistle Pig 15. You were given a bottle, and then it was on your bar, and it eventually went away.
It's gone now.
Yeah.
She's gone.
I got one as a birthday present 2.5 years ago.
Nice.
So
nice. So IW Harper, we had, did we do the 12 or the 15, excuse me?
No.
We just drank that on the side.
Yes.
Because that was
I think
Tim.
Bobby Hirschman. Or
Yeah,
no,
it's
Tim
Tim.
Kime. That's
Yeah,
right.
Tim
Tim Kime from Perdomo Cigars donated a partial bottle of the IW Harper 15. And so
and we did the IW Harper. You said episode 20 something?
episode 26.
Yeah.
We did the regular IW Harper.
Yeah. And I remember that one just being, it's dangerous in a sense that it's super light.
Yeah.
And it was just easy going down. It was, what is it, 80 proof or something like that? It wasn't much.
Yeah, I think it was around 80, and it's also under $30 a bottle.
So it's kind of what you not expect, but
I mean,
we weren't disappointed. It wasn't very complex. You know, it's one of those things that, if I recall, again, going back 3 years or so, it is something that went down super smooth. And like I said, very light.
Yeah.
So tonight we have this IW Harper, and we are smoking, like I said, the Undercrown Sungrown with it. What do we know about this bottle here?
So this is the first line extension they've done since they've been selling in the States.
Mm-hmm.
So the brand's been around since the late 1800s, and it changed hands on and off throughout the years, and then eventually was acquired by Diageo.
Okay.
So one of those big conglomerate companies that owns a bunch of different brands, all different types of spirits. And they mainly sold it internationally. And then until about 5 years ago, that IW Harper products were then sold in the U.S.
Like 5 years ago, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 2017. So you have the regular IW Harper bourbon, you got the 15-year, and then they also do a gin.
Okay.
So this is the first extension since it's been available in the U.S. This, like I said earlier, this came out in February 2022, so 6 months ago. They don't disclose. They don't disclose where it's coming from. So IW Harper doesn't own their own distillery. It's bottled at Stitzel Weller in Louisville, but they don't disclose who it's actually being produced by. If I had to guess, I would say Heaven Hill, because Heaven Hill does the 15-year for them. So my guess is it might be Heaven Hill doing that, but again, that's not released. On the bottle, it doesn't list an age statement, but when it first came out, their public address was that it's a 4-year straight bourbon whiskey that is then aged in Cabernet Sauvignon casks from California, but they don't disclose how long they do that process.
Yeah.
And they don't disclose the mash bill.
Perfect. So much. And then Cabernet they finish in, but we don't know how long.
Yeah.
Cool.
And this is coming in at 90 proof.
Okay.
So, yeah, a lot we don't know about it.
Indeed.
Which, in your opinion, would you rather know as much detail as possible about something, or do you like being kind of not knowing so that way there's no prejudgment?
It's not even prejudgment, I don't think. I mean, I would like to know if we're doing something like this, right? I mean, because people want to know that information to a point. Same thing with cigars. Like it's nice to know a little bit more detail just because I feel like you get more involved with it. You do, I guess, to your point, sometimes have like preconceived notions, like, oh, I'm not going to like that because of this mash bill or because of this.
It's got this much corn,
like, for example. But if the only thing you're giving away right now is the Cabernet cask finishing, I assume.
Yeah.
It's like, well, now you've got people that are going to be like, well, I don't like Cabernet cask stuff. So, I mean, I know you're probably marketing to a certain customer, because some people just, even if they know, like, oh, I like that mash bill. Oh, I like it's aged, whatever, 10 years or 4 years, whatever it might be. I'll give it a shot. But I mean, some people, if you're hiding that stuff, not disclosing it, it's kind of like in this day and age, why not? Unless there's something you don't want people to know. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like we've had a lot of the smaller, especially too, like they're pretty damn open about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, even some of the companies that are doing the staves in there.
Yeah.
What was that? Who was that?
Broken Barrel.
Broken Barrel. You know, they had it on the here's the mash bill. Here's the staves.
What percentage
Yeah.
staves are from this?
Yeah, I mean,
percentage staves
in
from
your
this.
face
That was
with
awesome.
that information. I enjoy that part. Yeah. That's me though.
You know, for me, I don't necessarily get caught up in knowing the mash bill because for most bourbon drinkers, whether something's a 65% corn or a 70% corn, if that's the only difference, like they're not going to be able to pick that out. But sometimes different distilleries have signature profiles,
right?
And some people like things coming out of certain distilleries. So I would at least like to know who was distilling the juice, you know, who they're sourcing this from. But, you know, I don't need to necessarily know everything else. Having years on it, that's cool. You know, obviously if it's bourbon, we know it's got to be at least 2 years. In their public address when they released it, they said it's at least that's 4 year. So,
all right. So it is nice packaging. Don't get me wrong. And so we're dealing with 90 proof here.
Mm-hmm.
What I find interesting about this, you talk nothing really about. This is not picking it apart necessarily, but on the back of the bottle. So on the front, just so you guys have, the bottle's beautiful. I do like their marketing, right? You got the IW Harper in the glass, right? Very, very bold on the sides of it.
The bottle on that 15 year is amazing.
Yeah. You've got basically, it looks like maybe a sticker or print, like kind of gold diamonds behind it. You've got the IW Harper with the Cabernet Cask Reserve, 45 alcohol, 90 proof, Kentucky straight bourbon, whiskey finished in Cabernet Sauvignon casks. On the back, sticker looks shitty, doesn't it?
It does.
A little crooked. It looks like there's like one of those things, you know what I mean?
Just slap it on.
Doesn't look machine done like the front, but our Cabernet Cask Reserve takes the subtle sweetness and distinct character of luxury Cabernet Sauvignon cask from California vineyards and pairs it with our smoothest bourbon to create an exceptionally complex flavor with bursts of dark fruit and spice. Then you have your standard government warning. What I find interesting, again, no mash bill, but they have serving facts.
I noticed that.
Which I have not seen on a bottle of whiskey in the United States.
Yeah.
So
serving
size is
calories.
Serving size is 1.5 fluid ounces.
A shot.
Servings per container, 17. 45% alcohol. Calories. Do you read this? 109 in 1.5 ounces. Carbs, 0 grams. Fat, 0 grams. Protein, 0 grams. Produced by IW Harper Distilling Company in Louisville, Kentucky. Website, drinkiq.com. Super, and there's some sort of code on the glass down at the bottom.
My guess is that has something to do with when it was bottled.
We got an 08, 07, 06 there. I don't know. Weird. I have not seen, you know, I was hoping for a little bit more protein in there, but, you know, whatever.
You would.
I don't know, man. What do you think of the marketing?
Well, like I said, I love their bottles. You know, the regular, you know, plain IW Harper bourbon bottle, you know, it's still that kind of, I think it's still a square bottle.
Yeah.
Looks nice. The one on the 15 year, I don't know how to describe it. It's like the entire bottle's like that diamond cut.
Yeah.
Like the triangle diamond cut sticking out of the bottle, like it grips. So, you know, very gorgeous bottle. Would look really good out in the sun. Just like a disco ball. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. That front label looks nice. Back label, let's half-ass put that on there.
It's just, it's poor execution on that. How about the juice itself? What do you think here?
This to me, it comes across light and young.
I don't know about young necessarily. Why do you say young?
It just has that. It's on the finish. It just has this kind of light, bright, not necessarily corn heavy, but just it comes across like that really ethanol forward finish that you get on a younger whiskey. And knowing that it's a Cabernet finish, because my wife and I drink a lot of Cab Savs, I kind of expected this to be a little deeper, a little richer in the flavor, maybe a little bit more complexity. The dark fruit, I don't know necessarily where that. I mean, they're probably saying it's coming from the finishing casks, the Cab casks, but I don't get a whole lot. I just get more citrus fruit notes on it, just because of how bright it comes across.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I also get a little bit of like a drier finish, and not
like an oak or cedar.
Yeah,
dry.
but not to go too far down the wine side of things. But there are some, just reds, whether it be Cabernet, and even the Cabernet, from my understanding, is kind of like mash bill, right? It doesn't need to be 100% Cabernet. It can be a somewhat a red blend. It has to be a certain percentage, from what I understand. I'm learning so much. Ray says, "Are we running out of things to talk about? Oh, no reason. Just not really interested in everything written on the back of the label of a bottle." Well, that's what we're doing here, Ray, is reviewing a bottle. And this stood out, the fact that it had nutritional facts on the back of a whiskey bottle. So, but no, it's kind of, I see what you're saying. It's kind of like a little bit of a bite, little harshness on the finish. And it's almost like a little bit of a, I don't want to say a drier wine, because I do like some drier wines, but it is a little bit just, I agree with the dark fruit. It's not, they boast, I guess it's not confusing. It's misleading that they're just pushing all this Cabernet stuff and not touching. They barely say anything about, and our smoothest whiskey. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing here is my question.
Yeah, probably spend a little bit more focus on the whiskey and a little bit less attention on the Cabernet casks.
Yeah, it's got that. I think it's like a dry harsh, like not harshness, dry finish. I don't know.
That alcohol kind of just sits on your tongue for a while too.
Yeah, Sean, you drinking this? What do you think? Stand by, everyone. Wait on Sean.
Gotta get up to go grab the mic.
Don't yank the whole table, please. In the studio garage.
On the nose, it's got a little bit of, I can get a little taste of wine on the nose. I don't know, because it's in a cask, right? Like wine cask out there saying?
Yeah, so it's finished in a Cabernet Sauvignon cask.
So I smell a little bit on the nose. Pretty sweet. For me, it's not much of a burn at the end for me. It's pretty smooth all the way through. I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's not like this. Is it young?
That's what he thinks.
Yeah, it feels kind of young. It's got a sweet taste and it's got a little bit of smoothness, but that's about it. I mean, there's not more, it's not one of those like where you're like, holy shit, this is great from start to finish. It's kind of like, it's good on the start, and then the finish is kind of like meh.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of depth
exactly.
to this.
These raving reviews. Tyler wants in. No, so again, it's not wine. I mean, again, they're pushing this as being wine forward in the marketing, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think we all have to realize too, sometimes is that it does matter. What Cabernet barrels they used, right? I mean, so I think for anyone that does like, say, cabs, I've had some that I'm like, it's not my favorite. Not Boone's Farm. I'm saying, I'm saying it's like, and I forget if it was a cab or just a red, but we just had Kristen got one from, I'm not going to say the name, but it was like this, their seasonal, you would know it, but I mean, it's a reputable restaurant that's also like known for their wines. Basically describing what it would be. But we had it here at the house, and she had one glass. And like I said, I can't remember if it was a cab or just a red blend. But it was just kind of had a little bit of this like short, dry finish. And it's kind of like not really making your mouth water for more. And, you know, it's almost, it should be paired with, so it has to be paired with something.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, I don't think that's always a shortcoming. I just think that it's not one that you're just going to like, you know, crack the bottle and always be happy with. And I think that's something that maybe we're dealing with here. And again, not really knowing because they don't really tell you a whole lot. But I mean, maybe it's just the fact that the cabs, you know, the barrels that they're using are something that is not my favorite finish. You throw it in because if they're using a similar juice as the regular IW Harper, I think it would be easy for however the finishing process, however long they're doing it, to almost take control of that product because of how easy drinking and light it was, the regular IW Harper. Then you do a finishing process, 6 months, you know, however many months it might be, it could get controlled by that finishing process because
they
it's
specifically
open.
didn't want. They actually said that they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want this to come across like like it tasted like you poured red wine into a bourbon. They didn't.
I don't think it does.
No,
it's oakier than that.
Yeah,
in a whiskey way.
But I mean, my wife and I drink quite a bit of Cab Savs, and like we've noticed that there are certain regions we don't like more so than regions we do like, and makes me wonder, like, maybe they're getting barrels from that region because some of the finish and some of the notes on this, kind of like what you were talking about, reminds me of some of those Cab Savs from certain regions that that we don't like for the exact reasons why we're tasting what we're tasting with this. Sean, what else do you have?
I wonder if it'd be good with like a mixer. Like it'd be better to mix it with something to.
On their website, they actually do talk about, you know, this being used for a cocktail.
Yeah, I think it'd be better for that. You may have already said it before. What's the price for that?
I didn't say it. So in the state of Ohio, it's $50 bottle.
Really? Okay.
$49.99.
Cheaper than what I saw.
Yeah, when I looked it up, there were some places online, and you know, some online retailers. I mean, $80, $100 for this bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the MSRP on it is $50, and in the state of Ohio, it's $49.99.
So for $50, you're not. I mean, if this was like $79, you know, and I'd be disappointed. That
Yeah,
I'd be disappointed.
at 50.
Yeah. I mean, 50. You better have a date.
you just started drinking this, right?
Yeah.
You
Just
want to
try.
talk about it, Tyler? Yeah, Tyler Jones.
Is this on?
Yep.
It's hot. Okay, here we go. Now the party started.
Oh, here we go. God didn't want to be on the show tonight.
Right.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Odd how this works out, huh?
Hey, here we are.
So, just off like initial, they're right about smooth whiskey. I'll give them that. You know, it's
Right.
it's smooth, almost maybe too smooth. Maybe that's just my palate or whatever. But yeah, it just doesn't give me that Cabernet. Like I'm a big Cabernet guy. I'm a big red wine guy, so I enjoy Cabernets quite a bit. So it actually intrigued me because I'm not really that big of a fan of IW Harper as a brand as a whole. So I was kind of looking forward to trying this. I thought he was laughing.
Well, I mean, if I remember correctly, when we had IW Harper on 4 years ago, like we talked about that being a decent summer drink because of how light it was.
Yeah.
Right, and this. What did you say? This is 90 proof. I mean, yeah, it tastes like 90 proof. But I don't get the Cabernet like characteristics even. Like it's
They're
like
subtle.
it's like they literally like poured the whiskey maybe for like 5 seconds in that Cabernet barrel and they just dumped it out. Yeah, it just doesn't have like.
Technically, that's finished.
I mean, it's
Like they did a Cabernet
Rinse.
right.
No,
It was like
they
it
did.
was a rinse.
They did a Cabernet
filter.
filtering like they do
Right.
for Jack Daniels through the charcoal.
Yeah.
We're all in there now. Switch it around real quick and get it out.
Yeah, that's almost. I think at this point we don't have to worry about getting advertised by IW Harper. So. But I hate to say that.
Maybe
but,
it's something in the air tonight. You know, who knows?
Maybe. But yeah, it just didn't have like the the redeeming qualities that I would look for in a bourbon, especially one at $50 and something Cabernet finish. I think there's
Do you
definitely
think this would be an okay, not nightcap necessarily, but an after dinner drink? So I look at sometimes when I'm getting this kind of dry, it's almost like a bitter. So you sit down, you have a cocktail, right? At like a steak dinner or whatever. You have a cocktail, then you're gonna have, say you have a cab with it. Not your favorite cab, but it's a decent cab or whatever, you know what I mean? You have a steak dinner, you got the whatever veggie, some sort of maybe potato with it, maybe not. But instead of having like a coffee for dessert, you have a glass of this. Would you think that would kind of round out the evening okay?
See, my definition of after dinner is a little bit different. Like, so I work
Just
for
shots.
I work for Espinosa, so it's like I want something like
Cuban
I want
coffee.
to have like a bolder cigar after I have dinner or whatever, and I probably want to have a little bit of a bolder drink when I have after dinner too, just because I just want to. That's just the way we kind of operate. So,
That's how you're bred.
yeah.
I'm kind of the same way too. After
Right.
a steak dinner,
I might want something a little bit more cast strength. I might want to, smoke a La Bomba or, something like Las Seis Provincias or something like that.
601 Blue.
601 Blue. Yeah, of course. Those knuckle sandwich Maduro. I mean, those are all like ones that I would go to after dinner, especially if I have something a little bit heartier. Now, if I'm like drinking it if you want to go this way, possibly, like if I'm having a lighter dinner or something like that, I want something to drink during dinner and I want something lighter to go with that dinner. Yeah, this probably actually wouldn't be a terrible suggestion for that. Like
chicken
or
or fish
or something like that. Yeah, exactly. But if I'm having like a steak dinner or something like that, I'm like, this is not what I'm having.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I'm trying here. I'll say it's the finish on this one that I'm just not really loving. I don't think when it first hits your palate, I'm not expecting that finish. It's a little bit sweeter, lighter, and then all of a sudden it's got a little bit of burn, but not necessarily in a proof way. It's just got a little bit of that dry. You say young, I'd say, I don't know, a little harsher. It's unfortunate because we're not dogging it. I mean, this is just honest. First time that we've ever had it. You've never had it, I believe.
Never had it
cracked
before.
it tonight. So it's tough. It's tough.
Not all of them are going to be home runs.
They're not. And I'm not going to say this is like the worst bottle I've had. It's not like just like, what the fuck is that? It's just, this is just.
No, I get with what you're just saying. Like, yeah, that the flavor you get up front and then it just takes an abrupt turn for that finish. And especially with it being a finished product, like you're kind of expecting it to go into another layer of flavor, like get a little deeper on the finish, maybe pick up some of those, plum or grape notes, some of those dark fruits that they talk about on the back of the bottle. Like you're kind of expecting it to turn that way, and it really doesn't. It kind of goes the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Some cab salves taste like they were strained through grandma's underbritches. Thanks, Tim Dodge, for that one.
Wow. Wow. I wonder what he'd think about this one here. Jesus. It's a rough one.
Why are you straining anything? Never mind. Not gonna ask.
It's an interesting one there. Let's move on to the cigar on that one.
Yes, please, let's.
I'm trying to help someone find this as well. That is something that I want to reiterate. If you guys are enjoying the show, like we have someone that is part of the Bourbon and BS community page, follows the podcast page on Facebook, and he's said it before. I don't think it's user error. It just says he has the worst time trying to find the podcast. So make sure, tell people if they're trying to find it, join the community page, check it out on the podcast page itself. I put it on my page and share it to them. I just sent it to him in Messenger, but yeah, hopefully, I mean, we've seen that dramatically drop off. I know that there's a little bit of throttling, censorship, whatever it might be on some of the platforms we use, like Facebook and also YouTube. But that's part of the community. It's like, make sure we get it out there. So if someone's now he got it that I sent it to him here. So that's good. This is the Undercrown Sungrown from Drew Estate. This was the third addition to the Undercrown portfolio, if you will, underneath the Drew Estate brand. They had the Undercrown, which is now called the Undercrown Maduro. Then you had the Undercrown Shade, which was an introduction trying to get into that kind of milder Ecuadorian Connecticut shade grown leaf on the wrapper. This one's interesting because they kind of take it, they combine a few things, in my opinion. They have an Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper on it.
Ooh, all right.
And of course, they say, I think, sun-grown, but it's on top of a Connecticut River Valley stalk cut leaf, as they call it.
For the binder?
Mm-hmm. It's a Habano binder, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's Connecticut River Valley Habano, which you have seen on some other things as well. With Drew Estate, they've got some stuff coming out of there. Fillers are from Nicaragua. They say, you know, this is interesting. You know, they include in this the filler an extensively aged Ligero from a certain region that is located near the border of Honduras. So in Nicaragua still, but it's in a unique region. And it's something that they say that originally when this came out, I think it was around 2017, but Jonathan Drew, the president of the company or the co-founder of the company, said that they spent 15 years. I was mistaken before the podcast, 15 years to secure this Sumatra wrapper leaf.
Ah.
So interesting on that. Drew Estate with the Undercrown and the Liga Privada line, I think they've got some. Everyone thinks, if you don't look at it, I feel like you think that, oh, it's going to be like it's Connecticut broadleaf or Habano sun-grown, like, you know, over Nicaraguan tobacco. They utilize tobaccos from a lot of different places.
Yeah, they do.
And there's some complex blends on that. That's something that I think they've been working on. It was interesting, you know, basically Drew Estate, I'll try to rattle off a few facts about Drew Estate. They were originally founded in 1996 by two fraternity brothers, Jonathan Drew being one of them. And this is something that at first they were in, do you know the story? So their first actual storefront was I think 16 square feet in the World Trade Center.
That I did know.
You did know that.
Yeah.
And do you know what their first line of cigars were? And if anyone's going to be at the event tomorrow night, there might be some trivia there at the event.
Take two guesses.
Get one.
La Vieja Habana?
Correct.
Ho!
A lot of people think that Acid was their first one, but this was after, I think, 1998 when Jonathan Drew went down to Nicaragua, basically, and was working on a lot of these blends and took a turn where they went towards the infused route because it was a market that I think that they saw potential and there wasn't a whole lot of competition there. Mm-hmm. And they were going to try to do the rebirth of cigars. That's when the Acid stuff came out. And then they quickly grew. And then at some point they moved out of New York, down to Miami, and kept with the Drew Estate cigar factory, basically pumping out cigars at a smaller level. They brought in Steve Saka around that same time. That's when things started to really change because he basically was that operations guy with all of that. And then I think it was within a little less than 10 years, I think that's when they put up that Drew Estate factory that really was what put them on the map beyond all of that. So,
in Esteli. And that's where you had, you know, the Liga Privada come out. You had some other stuff come out. The Undercrown, the story was with the original Undercrown, which is now the Maduro, was because the rollers and the factory workers were smoking up too much of the Liga Privada stuff. So they came up with another blend that was more, I guess, accessible as far as the tobacco. And that was what we now have as the Undercrown Maduro. Like a poor man's Liga.
Yeah, I think it was marketed poorly like that because you're expecting a Liga, and it was nothing like it. I mean, that was my personal opinion on that one. But then you had the Undercrown Shade come out after a while. This one came out more recently. There is now an Undercrown all decked out, which is the 10-year anniversary, which is my favorite of the four.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But this one, again, this is kind of that middle ground for them. I think you have the Shade on the mild plus. You have this medium plus. Maduro would be medium full. I know I'm not in agreement with everyone, but I think that all decked out, the new one is going to be, it's pretty medium pushing weight, like not way full, but it's pushing full. I feel like, I don't know. Have you guys smoked that? You haven't smoked it?
Which one?
the decked out.
Yeah, we featured that
recently did
recently.
it.
Yeah,
I think it's pushing full.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a bolder smoke and very
Yeah.
full flavor too.
Mhm. So this one's going to be, if you guys are familiar with any of the Undercrown, this is a very familiar band and marketing behind it. They did a red band, red and gold. The original was blue and gold. The shade is white and gold. They're all decked out, is a little more dressed up. But this has a foot band on it. It says Sungrown on it, same colors on there. And the box is a very classic style box, if you will. It is a wood box, neutral colors, kind of that burned in print on there. And it's even got the nail that's a flip top there, right? So it opens up. It's not the slide flip top, but it's got that nail in there like a traditional old school box. So I do like the marketing behind it because it's not too over the top. It's kind of classic looking. What do you think?
About the marketing of the box or
whatever? Sure, whatever.
No,
anything I just said.
At first, before you rattled off that it was a Sumatra wrapper, I just by the feel of it, I was leaning a little bit towards Habano, just because it has kind of this velvety or felt type of feel to it.
It's got a nice sheen.
Yeah, but it's soft, smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great looking wrapper. It's been a while since I had smoked one of these. I guess maybe my palate's shifted over the years, but like well, when I first had this cigar, like I remember this being like a little bit bolder and spicy, but like a dry spice, like not the deep, rich flavors as the Maduro, but just like a little bit stronger of a smoke and more spice to it. There's definitely some spice there, a little more through the retrohale.
Retrohale for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Plenty of spice through the retrohale. But no, it's actually more that medium plus in terms of strength for me. Like I said, I just remember it being a little bit more bold. So that's why I'm a little taken back, just because it's been a while since I've smoked this cigar. So, and nowadays I tend to smoke, heavier, bolder smokes anyway. So maybe that's the reason why this, comes across a little bit lighter than what I remembered.
It could. I think this, according to what I'm looking at, there is some shared, like the binder being that Connecticut River Valley stock cut and cured sun-grown Habano binder. That is the same on the original, but that had a Mexican San Andres, and then it had some Brazilian and Nicaraguan fillers. So you have a very different blend there.
Yeah, very.
With that. I like this cigar. I don't love it. I think this is what?
No, I agree. I agree.
I think that it does have some subtle spice. It has, especially in the retrohale, but it is. I think it's more medium bodied. It's a nice blend. I think for where they came in. I think Drew Estate. Once you had this whole thing where you were dealing with like basically the acids that were being very dominant in their portfolio. You had the Liga Privadas come out. And everyone that basically, in my opinion, was in love with like Ashton VSGs when they first came out, basically switched over to Liga Privada number 9s if you could get them. The exclusivity was a big thing there, you know what I mean? But I saw that from where I was, and I wasn't even in the industry. I was just a cigar lover or enthusiast at the time. But I mean, I really like that. When the Undercrown came out, and you said it earlier, it was the whole thing about being like a poor man's Liga is what people were telling me. And I smoked it. I'm like, this is nothing like a Liga 9. Yeah. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I thought that translation, and if you read their story, that's not necessarily what they say, but that's what came out. Yeah. And I think that's the way it was kind of translated to like the popular, the masses, right?
Or even to the retailers.
To the retailers. And then so I'm sitting there smoking this. I'm like, this is nothing like a Liga. Like this is, at the time it was, I think like a Liga 9 Robusto was probably falling in like $15-16 probably 15.
Yeah.
At that time, this is 07, I believe. I don't know. I can forget. It all runs together. But I think it was 07. This came out, and I don't know if this says it, what I had pulled up here. It's halfwheel.com is a great source if you guys have not had it. The Undercrown came out in 2011.
Okay.
I don't think this says when the Liga did. But, I mean, again, you do all this stuff where it's like they're trying to make these comparisons to the Liga Privada number 9 that I and a lot of people have fallen in love with. And I'm like, that original Undercrown, I was like, this is nothing like it. But again, to come out with another staple cigar that's more regularly produced, if you did that, you're gonna basically cannibalize your premier cigar, because this comes in at like whatever $8 when it first came out for a Robusto, so it was almost half price, from where I'm at, 40% less, something along those lines. So now it's like I wasn't super disappointed, but I never really cared for the original Undercrown. To this day, I think it's an okay cigar. A lot of people love it, and I think that's great. They're killing it. To do the shade after that, and then you also have now this Sungrown that we're smoking. At the time, Nate, when this came out, this was my favorite Undercrown.
Really? Just
because I wasn't a huge fan of the original Undercrown, which is now the Maduro. The shade, I was like, well, this is a Connecticut shade. It's okay. It's tough to walk into the milder competition. I mean, that's
because there's a lot
that's a tough one for anyone to do. You guys, Tyler, you guys have done it fairly successfully. I believe the Crema is one of your best selling cigars. I mean, so you can do it, and the Undercrown shade did well. I mean, it does well. It was just not necessarily for me. I thought it was okay. I think they did a nice cigar for that. Going back to the Undercrown, not the Espinosa Crema, I do like that a lot. I did have a chance to smoke the 601 Black today. Definitely check that out as well. But this one came out, and I was like, all right, this is a nice medium smoke. I like this blend. It's not necessarily something to like blow your socks off, but I think it'll hit a lot of people's profiles. And like I said, now the Undercrown 10 seems to be, I know it's the new one on the block, but I mean, it seems to be outselling. It is like $1 or so more than the rest of the Undercrowns. I think $1.
Okay.
It is, because the Toro's $13.95 on the Ohio shelf. Mm-hmm. So, so I think I like it. I like this cigar. Again, for where it comes in at price point, average price point, it was when it came out. It is still today, even with the price increases. I'd say that this one is your good everyday medium, you say medium plus cigar that I think that you could definitely enjoy with a lot of different things.
Yeah. I think this is one that I think this would actually go well with quite a few whiskeys, bourbons that are in that 90 to 100 proof range. Mm-hmm. It might get overpowered by some of the cask strengths. Might be a little bit much for some of the lighter ones, or even too much for some Irish whiskeys.
Yeah, I can see that with the spice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But who knows? With the Irish whiskeys, them having a little bit more of that sweetness to it.
Could do all right.
Yeah.
Could do all right.
Maybe I'll have to pick up a couple more of these and buy a bottle of Bua.
There you go. Sean, what do you think of this?
He didn't know we were going to call on him.
I like it.
I'm coming.
To me, it's more just because of what I guess I've been smoking lately, more mild to medium for me. It's retro hail is pretty good. It's not that, like you mentioned earlier, it's got a little bit of kick, but not much, but it's good flavor to it. It's kind of nice having something for me to be a little lighter.
This is lighter for you? To
me, yeah. I think it's...
You do smoke some bold stuff.
Yeah, so to me, it's like on the lighter side. I think it actually kind of pairs well with this just because it's lighter as well, with the whiskey. But yeah, I'd get another one. I really know. It's just like I said, it's nice to kind of switch it up and have something.
Would you call it mild, or you just think it's like more medium or lighter than what you normally smoke?
It's probably more medium, higher, mild, I guess. Just lighter than I normally smoke. I guess I'm just used to, like you said, bolder things, and it's not.
I was going to follow that up, ask you, and you as well, Steve, because one of the cigars that all three of us smoke quite a bit of is the BS Gold. Mm-hmm. That's a straight medium body. We love that cigar. Do you think this comes in? Do you think this cigar is a little stronger, a little lighter, a little lighter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, because I smoke the Golds quite a bit, and that's kind of like my medium to slighter high medium standard. And this seems, I thought it was a light, honestly, when I first had it. So And then more smoking it, you get that. I call it the journey of the cigar, and you start to get a little more off to it as it goes down.
Are you retrohaling this?
Yeah. Are you getting pepper?
See,
Yeah, man.
For me, I think the flavor.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think the flavor of this comes in a little bit lighter than a BS Gold, but I think it's got a little bit more spice, a lot more spice on the retrohale than the BS Gold for me, I believe. And that's and because this cigar comes across a little bit drier, it kind of, that's why to me it comes in like just a hair stronger than a Gold.
All right, so smoke the cigar without doing a retrohale. I think it has a very clean finish. I think it's maybe that could be part of it. I struggle to smoke a cigar anymore without retrohaling, but anymore, like you try to do that when you're thinking about people buying it or doing a review like this. It's like you do want to get that experience as well. And
I would say without the retrohale, to me, it's a lighter. To me, when I retrohale, I think it comes in more.
Everything's more subdued.
What's that when you not retrohale?
Yeah, it's subdued,
you definitely
right?
Feel the medium side of things when you retrohale.
Yeah.
When it's just more of a straight in and out, to me it feels lighter.
This doing the straight in and out, like I get a lot of I get a lot of cedar.
Yeah.
Like kind of like
because you lose a lot of that pepper and spice. I mean, it's got a little bit of that on the tongue. I feel like you do get a little spice, but it's not. The retrohale changes this cigar, which I think certain cigar, like all cigars, it'll change it a little bit. This is a different cigar if you retrohale.
Yeah.
Compared to not retrohaling.
Which is one of the great things about retrohaling a cigar, because there are things that your nose will pick out of a cigar that your palate doesn't.
So retrohaling, for those that are more on the whiskey side or not necessarily cigar smokers that listen to the podcast for part 2, whatever it might be, retrohaling, we've talked about before on the show. This is when you draw into the mouth. You're still not inhaling. Is his mic on? He's coughing into. Jesus. Take him out.
He's
back
muted
and
now.
Shoot him. Jesus.
We don't have to take him out back.
No, I just. That would definitely be a quick uptick in views, but probably long-term bad, leading to our part 2, stay the course. We turned you off because you're hacking.
Have you tried retrohale? Take a hit, retrohale, and then take a sip.
Cannonball.
Yeah, Cannonball.
Cannonball coming.
I think it tastes a little bit better.
What do I do?
Which process? Which order?
Just take a hit, retrohale, and then take a sip pretty quick after. See if you taste anything different, or if it tastes different, tastes worse, tastes better.
I was going to go into that in my pairing, but yeah.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, it could be also that was my second pour of that. But some of what I referred to, I was trying not to, but like the harshness or that finish, it got cleaned up a little bit.
Yep.
I think on the palate,
it tastes better.
Yeah, I think
it also keeps that retrohale, like actually like that sensation in my nose a little bit more.
Going straight from the cigar to the whiskey, I get a little bit more vanilla notes out of the whiskey. Like it comes across a little bit more vanilla, a little bit sweeter.
Where's that little guy?
You mean this little guy?
That little guy.
That little guy.
Let's do that next as we get into the pairing. Jeez. I think it's because you're now being able to taste some of the flavors that we were I feel like possibly getting slightly overpowered with some of that finish that we kept referring to. You know what I mean? So now that I don't want to say you numbed it, but you got that pepper and spice through your nose and everything else. Now that's working. And then to Sean's exercise there, then you take a sip of the whiskey. That part of your palate is being consumed at that point, if you will. And I think that's maybe where you're getting at. I'm going to do a couple drops. Do 3. Now I'm going to get out the Bunsen burner.
Grab the beakers.
All right. Swish it around. Spinning around the machine. No, I hope not.
No, it's not.
God damn it.
That's why Sean's talking so much, is he knows the mic's muted. Ooh, I see that reaction.
Did you do 3? His mouth is open.
I did 2 because I had a little bit less
Okay.
whiskey in my glass than you
And?
did. Well, I had to hurry up and swallow because you were asking me a question.
You're talking now, so don't take another drink. Like,
No,
what
I
do you-
need to because I
All
wasn't.
right.
I was trying to focus on it, and then you started asking me a question. I'm like,
All right,
oh
everyone,
shit!
just take 5 and wait on Nate here.
I guess I can't take a sip now because you're
Go
taking
ahead.
a sip. So,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
what did it
We're
do
all
for
gonna
you,
s-
Steve?
We're all going to sit here and wait.
We'll edit it out.
No, we won't. Greg Snyder's watching. Hey, Greg.
Adding a
From
little.
Chicken Cock. Yeah. Greg, if you're still on, I saw you popped in. Tyler Jones from Espinosa Cigars. He had some of the rye,
The Chicken Cock rye.
that we still had left, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah. He,
Surprised.
yep. He thought it was,
He was
very
surprised.
smooth.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the comment, Greg. Appreciate
Cheers,
you.
boys. Love what you do. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, love having you on. We're trying to ration the Island Rooster there.
Yeah.
What's left of that we're trying to hold on to.
Yeah.
And enjoy here and there.
No, I
think it smooths it out.
yeah.
I think it takes away this. Go ahead. I did ask you.
Adding a little bit of that water kind of had the same effect as Sean was talking about, going from the cigar to the whiskey. Like it brings out a little bit more sweetness, a little bit more vanilla. Like it made the flavor a little bit deeper and richer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it on a 90 proof, you typically don't necessarily need to open it up, but we've talked about the whole proof discussion of the higher the proof, the harsher, or the, whatever it might be, like a little more powerful, but you don't necessarily need that. It's all about the flavor. And to bring in our recent previous guest, Greg Snyder from Chicken Cock Whiskey, all the years he's been in it, one of the things I loved about his conversation that we had was that he basically, when he's doing this stuff, he doesn't necessarily look at the proof. He's all about flavor.
Yes.
He's not necessarily, he understands the business side of it. We talked about that in that episode, that he understands that it's one of those things that you want. There is a market for barrel strength and all that stuff, but the product is it's what's the flavor? What's the drinking experience?
Well, and he was talking about with that Island Rooster when he was doing samples of it, like he was actually sampling it at barrel strength and then like slowly like proofing it down to try and find that sweet spot where you're both getting a lot of flavor from it, but also it's still a very profitable product for the company. Yeah. Because if any of our listeners hadn't listened to that episode or don't remember, they only did 23 rum barrels for that product. So since their rye is a 4-year rye, obviously they're going to be losing some to the angel share over the course of that 4 years. They did 23 rum barrels. So obviously it would take more than 23 barrels of rye to fill those rum barrels. They only do 200 barrels of rye a year.
Yeah.
So they're using a good portion of their yearly rye to make that product.
Yeah.
So he said the Island Rooster is one of his favorites of all time. One of the
last week, I know.
Yeah, one of the followers of the podcast recently made a trip to another state and went to another liquor store and actually tagged you and I, Steve, on some pictures because Austin. He found a bottle of the Island Rooster and a bottle of the Cotton Club,
which
was a $500 bottle.
It looked
in that tin with the old school rooster on it and the colorized.
It looks like it was like they found it in the Cotton Club.
Yeah, from 100
like,
years ago.
Yeah, it looks cool. It looks like an old Dusty there. You know what I mean? So, all right, this is part one. We rounded out with some ratings. So we're gonna rate. It's rating time here. The whiskey, which is the IW Harper Cabernet Cask Reserve. And Nate, thank you for bringing that. Absolutely. The cigar, which is the Undercrown Sungrown from Drew Estate, and the pairing of the two. If you guys are just tuning in live now, we've already talked in depth about the bottle. We've talked in decent depth about the cigar as well in Drew Estate. And so now we do it. So the first time, if you guys are listening for the first time, that is, we are doing basically 10 being the best, 3 different ratings, 1 on the whiskey, 1 on the cigar, 1 on the pairing. Sean, would you like to chime in since you're doing both? Tyler, you can throw your 2 cents in on the whiskey if you'd like. No, now he doesn't want to be on the show again. Oh, cool. He had his, I don't want to do it. And all of a sudden, let me say something.
Maybe
and it's
Jack
like,
told him.
I don't want to do it. It's cool, man.
He's so shy. Sorry.
Why'd you sing that?
Anyway, for the cigar, I kind of like the change in pace. I'll go with 8.5 on that. I'd definitely buy it again.
Nice.
I really enjoyed the flavor, the retro. Yeah, it's got a little bit of kick to it, but I think it was it's good. I liked it. With the bourbon, I would say at first it was like, but then once we started drinking a little more of it and kind of mixing it with water, or you guys did, and I did with the cigar, I started at a 7, but I'm going to move it up to an 8 just as the night progressed. Got a little bit better.
On just the whiskey itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the pairing, I'll go 8.5. I think they go pretty well together. I think they definitely complement each other, especially when you cannonball it.
Cannonball coming.
Cannonball.
Yeah. So.
Oh, now he wants it. Jesus. It's like,
Dealing with a child.
I gotta have my 5 minutes of fame, I guess.
If your review on this whiskey takes 5 minutes,
No, not at all.
go
The
ahead.
IW Harper, since that's the only thing I'm participating in tonight. Honestly, I'll give it probably like a 5.5.
Okay.
Just wasn't my profile. Not saying it's gonna, no one should like it by any means. I think there's definitely a profile for that kind of person. It's just not fitting for me.
If you're one of them.
If you're one of them, yeah.
What are you smoking with it?
Because
Because that does
knuckle
impact
sandwich
it.
Habano.
Yeah, so I got a knuckle sandwich Habano, which
Okay.
obviously that's going to be a little bit more medium plus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of a little bit more of that black pepper note on the back end that kind of like gives it a little bit more oomph. And on the retro
Sure.
hill, it definitely gives a little bit more oomph. So I think it overpowers the whiskey. So it doesn't really give it fair justice on the pairing wise. If I had something a little bit lighter, maybe like a 601 black or crema, in that sense, I may have enjoyed that pairing a little bit better. But yeah, the knuckle sandwich Habano kind of just overpowers it a little bit too much. So the pairing's probably the same score wise. But go try knuckle sandwich Habano if you get a chance.
No,
Offer-
that's why I wanted to get on.
Offered at the Tinder Box
Jesus
of Easton.
fucking Christ.
And mute.
No, don't mute him.
I already did. Oh,
All right.
You put the mic down.
No, the knuckle sandwich Habano. I still think that's pretty stout, medium plus.
Yeah.
It's a lot of flavor. It's got a lot of what we're talking about too in the retro hail. That is not for I want a smooth medium. I'm not giving you that.
Yeah.
No,
That's-
if you
that
want a
cigar
medium, but
smokes-
you want
That cigar smokes a little bit bolder than what it looks like.
yeah, for sure.
It's like Post Malone. Don't judge a book by its cover.
All right, good thing we were talking about Post Malone in the shop. No one heard it, but yeah.
Thank God it was muted.
Jesus. Nate, how about you?
All right. So on the whiskey,
Going
and
off the rails here a little bit.
so my rating on the whiskey was, that first glass and a half of it,
Mhm.
Before we added any water, not counting the going cigar, then whiskey, just the whiskey alone for a $50 bottle, I'm giving this a 6. Probably not going to buy this one again.
Okay.
I actually enjoyed both the regular IW Harper and the 15 more than this one. Now the 15 is going to be like an $80, $85 bottle, something like that.
Right.
The regular IW Harper is coming in, I think, around 30. For me, those were just a little bit overall, just a better product than what this one is. I don't really get much out of that Cabernet finish, which, like I said, they intentionally didn't want to make that Cabernet finish overly pronounced. So they didn't age it a super long time in those casks, but they're putting
That's
so
all
much.
they talk about.
I was getting ready to say, they're putting so much attention on the fact that it is finished in Cabernet casks but it doesn't really stand out. There's not a whole lot of complexity
Mhm.
to this. Those initial tastes when it first hits your palate, Like it's got a little sweetness to it, but then, you think that finish is going to, kind of have that Cabernet sweetness or something
Mhm.
like that. And it just takes a left turn and has that kind of drier finish is what you were talking about. For me, it came across like like I said, a little bit younger. Like some of those rushed whiskeys that we've had, something like that. So, smaller casks or stuff like that. So,
How about the cigar?
Cigar, I'm going to give the cigar a 7.5. Good smoke. Something, now that I've smoked this tonight, probably try it a little bit more often than I have. Not necessarily something that's going to be my regular rotation, but definitely a good cigar, especially if you're looking for, if you like Sumatra wrap. It's got a nice texture to it. It's a very consistent cigar, start to finish. It's got good flavor to it. It's more for me, the way my palate has grown over the years. This is more enjoyable now than when it first came out. I like this a little bit more now than I did initially.
Even though you say it's not as bold as you thought it was.
Initially, when I first smoked this cigar, like I just remember it being like a super dry, spicy cigar, and it's not, and with a decent amount of strength to it. But smoking it now, it's not quite that cigar. The Maduro is going to be a little heavier, a little richer. But this one's more that medium, pleasant, smooth smoke. And then as far as the pairing, I kind of agree with Sean a little in the sense. I give the pairing an 8. So I was a 6 on the whiskey, 7.5 on the cigar, but I give the pairing an 8. I think this cigar makes the whiskey better.
That's good.
Especially,
so sometimes that can happen.
Especially going
things,
cigar to whiskey. Like it makes that whiskey when it first, like I said earlier, a little bit more of those vanilla notes, a little bit sweeter, a little thicker when it first hits the palate. So I think the pairing is good. Both products on their own, okay, but together, this cigar enhances the whiskey. Okay. I don't necessarily think it goes the other way. I don't think the whiskey enhances this cigar.
No, I got you. So for me, the whiskey, I'll give the bottle 7. To Tyler's point on that, it's worth trying. $50 a bottle.
Try it at a bar first.
Yeah, you maybe try it at a bar, or if someone's got to try it at their place. It's nice to have. Everyone's always about having stuff on their bar. The collectors, especially, have the rare stuff or the sought after stuff or whatever. This is one to have a little bit of diversity at your bar, right? So this is something that a lot of people may not have had this or spent the money on it. So it's not bad if you're at this liquor store and you want to add something to your home bar for entertaining, that you could say, all right, I'll spend the $50, put it on the bar. Nothing else really I need right now, but I want to add something to the bar so that when people come over, they can try something they may not have had, because that is part of the fun of hosting when you have stuff. It's not always be like, hey, you got to try this. This is the one that you can never get again, and you're showing off and all that stuff. No, this is something like, hey, I don't know if you've had this, but I'm interested to see what you think. Take a sip of it, and then add a couple drops of water. The drops of water and what you were saying about the cigar doing the same, I think it did a lot of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. It
took away a little bit of that finish that we're all kind of hung up on. And so that would be something that's a fun thing to do with like house guests or dinner guests, is that you can pour of this, and I'd say it's a 7 neat. Throw an ice cube in there. I don't know. We didn't throw an ice cube in there. Let me add a couple drops of water, or 2 or 3 drops of water. Now I'm going to be up there like 7.5. It made the whiskey better on its own.
Yeah.
So the cigar.
So if you're not a cigar smoker, add a couple drops of water to get that same effect.
We're talking about smoking it with this particular cigar. So that's why I'm talking about the whiskey by itself.
Yeah.
7.5 with a couple drops of water. The cigar, I'd say 7.5. I mean, this is a solid medium-bodied cigar. I mean, when this came out, this size, this Toro, Grand Toro, whatever they call it, it's a $9 MSRP. I mean, this was in 2017, so this is a solid medium-bodied cigar for me. You know, it's not something that I'm expecting to be blown away at whatever. It comes in around 11 or so now, you know, which again, average price cigar. The construction's fine, or good rather. The wrapper is got a nice sheen to it. The presentation's good. I mean, you've got complexity in the sense that it's not complex that it changes, but if you retrohale, it's a different cigar. So I think there's some depth to the cigar. It just depends on what you're looking for. So that's where it's 7.5, but that's a solid, you know, average price cigar. It's not one that I go to myself all the time, but I have no problem recommending this to someone that's looking for a medium bodied cigar. I like a little bit of spice. Cool. Here you go.
Smoking this tonight actually makes me want to try the Sungrown Dogma that the Tinder Box got in recently.
Yeah.
Stellar. Love that cigar.
On the pairing, I'll give the pairing an 8 because I'm kind of with you guys. I think the cigar brings out a little bit more of the whiskey. It takes away that finish a little bit that I'm not so keen on. I think that there's going to be something there that this is one that if I don't want to say just in the context of the conversation tonight, I'd say that the pairing is an 8 because both are a little bit better because of it. I will say that. I don't want to say that necessarily the IW Harper Cabernet brings out more of the cigar, but it goes okay with it. You know, the cigar smokes fine. The flavors are there. You know, it didn't overpower it. This finish we were talking about earlier in the show of the IW Harper, that went away a little bit because of that. So I'd say it bumps up the whiskey a little bit. But the pairing itself, this is a decent pairing. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. You know, if this is the bottle and this is a cigar that we're sitting around the fire with, we'd be okay. Yeah, we'd have a good night. No one's going to be like, oh, what else do you have? You're going to have a nice night. Yeah, you know, like seriously, there's 4 of us in the garage tonight. Sometimes there's more, but tonight there's 4. And this is something that if this was the thing, if like Tyler's in town, Sean, we're not doing anything, you know, Nate's coming over, we're not doing the podcast, and we're sitting on my back patio, I wouldn't have a big issue bringing this bottle out if I had it in the bar, or Nate, you brought the bottle over and I had, say, some of these sun-grown Undercrowns and say, hey, let's do this. We'd have good conversation. It would accompany the night in a good way, in my opinion. That's where I give that an 8 because I think that it's a fine pairing. It's not going to be something that you're like, oh my God, where'd you get the bottle? Where'd you get the cigar? It's just like, we're drinking whiskey and smoking cigars and having good conversation with good people. So good and better. There you go. Exactly. So if you guys have had these, make sure you hit up the Bourbon BS podcast page or even the community page and give your thoughts on it. And the comments, we got some viewers, but everyone's been kind of just chilling right now. So we'll round out part 1 here. Thank you guys. Patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast, and also Venmo at Bourbon and BS. You guys help support this financially, and it's a great help. It gets it out there, and we appreciate that. And if you guys have any questions about that, just let us know. We'll help you out. And then if you guys want some swag, buyjack.com /Bourbon and BS. I've got the podcast shirt on. Pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. Nate's got one of the BS 3/4 on, and there's also some hoodies on there for fall coming up, and ladies V-necks as well. So definitely check that out. And then also Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. They do have a lot of Drew Estate products, including the Undercrown Sungrown. And then also check out Altadis USA. We're going to be lighting up the Monte Cristo Espada Oscuro, which we have featured on the podcast before. Thank you for the continued support, and also be a cigar company. The gold and the silver are now available. Check those out. Gold's by Plasencia, and silver is by Espinosa Cigars before Tyler hits the road here. So, guys, thank you very much. Cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Thanks, Tyler, for chiming in and stopping by. Cheers to Espinosa Cigars. Sean, all you guys out there, make sure you share, like, and review us. Have a great week. Yeah, man, be safe.
Thanks, bro. Good to see you guys. Take care, man. Be safe. Thanks.
We're going to be rolling into part 2 here momentarily. Just want to give it a little bit of a breather here. Tyler's taking off.
Make sure he's completely gone so we talk about it.
Sean, you want to sit in or you want to just hang out? Stay the course. You look like shit. I mean, you look handsome. Up to you, man.
I will chill.
All right.
I'm gonna have to leave early.
That's fine.
So I get up
You
fucking
can chime in on the microphone if you want.
Yeah. I just may have to leave early.
No problem.
Plus, he's not wearing one of the shirts from buyjack.com.
It's all right.
So
It's all right. Kristen says, "Be nice to Nate."
I know.
Is that what you saw on my phone?
I
saw it up there.
I saw it up there.
I thought she commented because then you're like, "Thanks, Kristen."
No, yeah, yeah. Believe, unlike some people, I could read that from here when it popped up in the corner.
I still have some context left. I'm not going in the eye doctor until I need more. Todd Bost is on the feed now. Thanks for tuning in, man. I know you said you were having problems. He was the one that's having problems finding it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Stay the course. See where this goes. If you guys have any comments, questions, I'll throw this. Let us know. Also share, like, review, but share because hopefully we'll have some good conversation here. And if you guys ever, if you're listening right now during the intermission, if you ever have topics you want us to cover, just let us know. You know, I'll throw that out there again instead of the day of. I'll throw it out there maybe over the weekend on the community page and on the podcast and see if anyone's got any topic suggestions.
Yeah, I've got a little note that I keep on my phone with topic ideas. The one of the ones I have right now is the one that that whiskey rep from Bardstown had given us.
Yeah,
so been saving that, I think, for certain guests.
Mm-hmm. Ryan Newman is now watching. He's here. Congratulations on the engagement, Ryan. He's been on the show before, but so if you guys don't know Ryan Newman, part of the community in Columbus, Ohio, check out his lounge as well. He manages the Royale Lounge over on the west side near the casino in Columbus, Ohio. So if you're in the area, check out, obviously, Tinder Box at Easton on the northeast side and check out Royale on the west side. And congratulations again. All right. I don't know what to talk about here, so we'll just start. How about that? See what happens. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 233. This is part 2. This is Beyond the BS. This is where we have a life topic every week. And I was just mentioning in the intermission. So if you guys are listening to the audio on this, guys, if you ever have a topic, you know, we're over 200 episodes in. I'm open. Nate's open. Well, you don't have to be on it. But if you have something you want us to cover, let us know. It's not, I don't want to say it's difficult. It's just sometimes it's tough to keep coming up with a different topic. So we might have some repeats a little bit or some things that run over, but we never want to let this part go. So, I mean, we want to make sure that we include it every week. And sometimes it's, you know, spawned from something going on in one of our lives, one of our guests' lives. Sometimes it's relevant to the guests that we have on. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a pure interview, but I mean, tonight we're going to be talking about Stay the Course. And I know we've talked a bit about this type of a process or a topic before, but I see still new old faces coming into the Tinder Box. I haven't seen in a long time. Still just getting back out. There's a lot of changes going on. I'll say this, that industry's all over. You know, Sean asked earlier tonight if we're dealing with a lot of back order issues in the cigar industry, and we are. I mean, so we're dealing with that type of process and the issues with that process. And there's a lot of big retailers, there's a lot of big companies that are still dealing with the overturn, now the layoffs, now they were projecting that apparently for whatever reason that coming out of the true days of the pandemic that like everyone was living a certain way, and these people that are calling the shots, they started forecasting their business as if this was the new normal. And as it turns out, it's not. And so now we're in this situation where I think that you have some of these professions, these lifestyles, where you had, you weren't taking vacations, so you had more money to spend on other things like cigars, like home improvements. You did all that stuff. Well, now you want to get back out. Now you want to do all this stuff. I'm not necessarily making this a conversation about coming out of the pandemic. It's more of, when you talk about staying the course, this can be career goals, this can be personal goals, health, fitness goals, all of those things, improvement goals. We've talked about a lot of those different things on the podcast before, but the way I described it here in the description is, what's guiding you in the different areas of your life? Do you focus on just the long-term goals and shake the small stuff? Because a lot of times that kind of is preached to a lot of people, shake the small stuff, right? Stay the course. And then the other thing is, how do you decide if you should stay the course or change the direction of it? Because I think there's a lot of things where we look at these things, you have these long-term goals, you're adapting at the same time around you. So you're shaking the small stuff, but sometimes that small stuff is a sign that the course needs to change.
Or that there may be other dangers, bigger issues down the road ahead.
Right. So I know that you went through, some career changes in the last couple of years, Nate. You stuck
Changed
with
jobs
it,
still within the same company,
but that's still a different thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know, Sean, you did as well. If you want to participate in this whole thing, but
I think Sean's changes were a little bit more drastic.
but I'm looking at this is that, stay the course. I don't want to necessarily say that it's all about balance, but there is a little bit of that side of things that I think that balance is a big thing, right? It's one of those things that if your overall goal, it's the scope of it, right? You have a career path that you're on. Sean, Nate, myself, and a lot of people out there, that stay the course type thing, the long term, where you think you're going to be in 10 years, 5 years. That's an interview question. We talked about that on the show before. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, you say your answer, but I mean, is it like, if that doesn't happen, what are we doing here? And again, shaking the small stuff is something that, if depending on what the goal is, you may have to redirect or reroute that course, take a couple turns there. You know what I mean? You might have to take a very sharp left turn at some point so that you can get to your bigger goal that actually is trumping that. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in life that I feel like when you introduce your career, you introduce your health, you introduce the outside factors that were, for our generation, people that are on the earth right now, was unheard of what we dealt with. We're still dealing with that. If you want to call it aftermath or just this phase of it, it's still happening. So you have all those things. Then you introduce your love life or your home life, if you will, depending on where you're at with that. All of these things are moving. Imagine, as a metaphor, you have these different ships all trying to get to this goal in your mind. And you have your health boat, you have your career boat, you have your family or your home life boat. Getting those three ships, just for starters, to stay the course, and everything around it is basically the storms, is the unforeseen things that you can prepare for that voyage, that journey or whatever. But again, with that metaphor being kind of the guiding aspect of this conversation, I feel like this is something that we can look at and talk about, and hopefully people will comment if they're listening, is something that we all know it's not easy, but how do you do it? Sean, you got the mic. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, just something, because I've definitely been changing courses, over the past couple of years with my career, but one change of course I did, and I think it's a good thing to start by, is your health. For the last probably couple of years, I've been eating like shit and not doing much, and that affected other courses in my life and how I took them. One, with the job I have, is very mentally stressful and demanding. And when I wasn't you know, when I wasn't eating well, not only was I not really focused with work, I was hard to keep up and I was making mistakes. I was also falling into a depression. I honestly feel eating poorly is a huge contributor to that, and not doing any kind of movement. You know, I mentioned it before. I was suicidal earlier in the year. I had major depression. I was seeing counselors. I was going through a lot of shit, and I finally woke up to see a few months ago that things had to change. I remember I was going to go get blood or platelets or something, and my blood pressure was like 160 over 120 or some bullshit, and I'm like, well, that's not good. This is now it's starting to become.
They told you that wasn't good either.
Yeah, it's starting to become more like I'm just eating like shit. This is like, okay, now there's other factors are going to come into play if I don't change course. And the course I changed was a very slow but steady course. Whereas in the past, for what I did is I started Weight Watchers. For me, it helped because it took out the guesswork of what to eat. You had points, you stuck to your points. You learned over time what your points were and what you couldn't. And it just, instead of trying to count macros and micros and all that bullshit, it just got too much for me. So I did that. And since I've started that, I think it was Father's Day I started, I'm so much more focused at work mentally. Things that, like if things go to shit or things happen where everything falls apart, I don't lose my shit like I used to or fall into depression again. I don't let it affect me long term. I'm able to brush it off and not sweat the small stuff. And that right then and there was proof in itself that that's what I needed. And I'm kicking myself for why didn't I do that sooner? Because it was so simple. It's just taking that first step. And once you do, and it doesn't have to be, I'm going to go to the gym and work out every day and eat celery and fish for, there's a lot of things you can still do and take that path. And within the second day of me just eating a little bit better, not, just in moderation, it gave me more motivation to eat better as time went and still not strict. It was still, I can have pizza. I can still have things. I save those points up to have something that I crave at the end of the week. So anyway, since I've been doing that, I'm down 20 pounds. I'm starting to slowly get back into working out, just light push-ups, sit-ups, just nothing that's going to like hurt me in the process where I used to go right into P90X and do, I didn't never want to come back. I'm finally at a pace where like I can do something. I feel good when I'm done, and I look forward to going back the next day and doing it because I don't have to kill myself to do it. And I'm seeing results by doing that. And so now take on my job. Now I'm way more focused. I get shit done. I'm getting, recognition for what I'm doing. And that course is easier for me to maintain now because of making simple changes and not being drastic about it.
You mentioned a lot of different factors there. That to you now, looking back again, you're talking, why didn't I do it sooner? Why didn't you switch to this company sooner? Well, I mean, again, these are all moving parts in the scenario. Going back, and this literally was just kind of on the fly type of thing of doing the whole ships thing. But you think about that is that you did a lot of the things where it's like you don't just take a hard turn with a big ship, right? Especially if you've got a small fleet, which is what you're dealing with, right? So sorry if you guys get tired of this metaphor, but I don't really care. I hope you guys follow along to a point because you really need to you have to steer it. You have to steer the ship. So if you're changing course, it's not necessarily that sometimes you do change the destination, but I'm saying if you have the same destination of whatever the success that in your mind, like it'll change a little bit, but you have to, like you're steering the boat, you're steering the ship, and it's a slower or a steady change, right? Because if you shift too quickly that course, it'll cost you. It's dangerous, right? It's like a crash diet. It's about like I quit my job because I'm unhappy. It's like, all right, well, how are you going to pay your bills? Fuck. You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of start steering towards the goal of what's the trajectory of where you want to get to get maybe stay the course, get back on the path that you were on before when things were good. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you is that you do all these things, you start steering the boat. All right. Well, I realize that we're sailing into a storm here that's probably going to sink the boat. is going to take you down completely. And then everything's lost. Or I'm going to start looking at what can I do to get around this part of the journey, the life, whatever, where I'm at, so that I can get back into the more sunny, the clear seas, like
doing it more strategically.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm hearing there. You had a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah.
And they all were kind of one of those things like, all right, so, I mean, you made that change, in your career and your health and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden more opportunities came. And when you had the new opportunities come, because you're doing all those things, now all of a sudden you're getting to that point where you can handle the not so rocky waters. Like it's more tolerable. I can manage these things, getting back to that point. You're taking the turn, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'd written down that you lightly touched on that I had written down, which I'm like, why is he looking at my notes?
Me?
No,
I didn't.
No, I know you didn't, but some of the stuff you said.
We've been doing this for a
So
long
sometimes
time.
you have to shift course to avoid a storm or an iceberg. You're still headed towards the same destination, but sometimes there's going to be, a bump in the road or a storm in the seas that you have to, because it's a lot safer to steer the ship away from the storm than to just try and drive right fucking through it. Because who knows, maybe your ship can't take driving through that storm.
Yeah.
Everyone thought the Titanic was unsinkable till it hit an iceberg.
Jesus. Yeah, that's what they say. Great movie.
There was a little bit of an overconfidence.
That's right.
You had the guys like, no, this ship's unsinkable. No, it's made of iron. It'll absolutely sink.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people think they have their shit together, and then all of a sudden something doesn't go their way and they lose their shit.
Yeah, the world says, hold my beer. Ray Chester asks, he says, I'll throw it up on here just because this is what I love about, especially, the whole thing with part 2. Has the state of the economy currently impacted sales of cigars? How are people buying fewer as it's a bit of a luxury item? Yes, there's been a lot of changes. Not only is it the fact that we had a little bit of a cigar boom, like we were talking before the show, because Sean was asking similar questions, about back orders. We had a cigar boom when people were sitting at home. Nate, you commented, people that return to the office smoke less than they would when they worked from home. Yes. Also, you weren't doing anything, so you had more money. Also, the U.S. government was printing money for free. We all won. Cool. They just sent out money, even if you were employed. So, I mean, yes, people had money, which is something that has, in my opinion, not to dive down the rabbit hole that we did before the podcast, but the moves that the world and this country made during the pandemic at the time absolutely crippled the economy where we're at right now in our country, and it's affecting the whole world. And cigars are no exception. With the massive inflation going on in the country, there was just a recent report that just in July, for example, retail sales in this country had flattened. Before, people were spending more money. With all the news, the gas prices, and the more recent, more subtle, because it wasn't health, but the more recent scare that the media was portraying, in my opinion, about the inflation and everything else. And now people are getting laid off in a lot of industries because things were projected poorly, because you can't keep up with a world or a government in our country that is constantly just either going one extreme or the other. So no one knows how to really navigate the ship. So there's a lot of fucking left turns going on right now. Now they're projecting, and they're seeing already in August and hopefully going forward towards the school year in the United States, is that people are feeling more comfortable that the gas prices are down. So now all of a sudden the flip of it is that things are leveling out. Interest rates are going very quickly up, which will then level a lot of the values of things as well. So there is a bit of balancing out. And again, if you've ever taken Econ 101 course, you could actually run a lot of the countries in this world, it seems, the way that we're doing things now. What if we just take a quick left turn and just like lower all the interest rates across the world and just give money away. I feel like long term this might be a bad idea. I think we'll be fine. Welcome to 2022, going into the third quarter. Jesus Christ. So yes, it has affected the cigar industry, but it's still going well because in the fact that it is a luxury item, and so a lot of the customers in the cigar or the luxury item type of realms, they still are less affected by a lot of times. So you'll lose the people that didn't have the disposable income and they had it, then all of a sudden they're able to buy more luxury items. The people that have that on a consistent basis, that have not been affected by some of these things, they are still being able to buy what they want and spend money on what they want because they are more financially sound.
You'd brought up that interview question about, where do you see yourself in 5 years? In your previous industry, you interviewed a lot of people.
I did.
What were some of either the more common or some of the more bizarre answers to that question that you ever got?
Which one?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, what were some of the more common answers, and what were some of the more like bizarre standout ones?
There weren't a whole lot of bizarre ones because when you're in an interview process, I feel as though a lot of times, and again, so this was in the moving and storage industry. So I interviewed a lot of frontline staff, whether it be like, intro salespeople, frontline staff that are actually doing the moving and driving. I also interviewed a lot of like senior management positions as well. But when you're in the interview, you're doing that best first impression type thing. So you don't necessarily want the shock value. The thing that, would normally I'd expect it sometimes in certain positions, especially people that came in there with that kind of gunslinger mentality, is that, it's like, well, I want to be in your position in 5 years. What they tend to leave out is that they say, well, I hope that you have actually been promoted through the ranks, in the next 5 years, so that your position would then be available, that I would love to grow with the company and be in a similar position as you. That's how you answer the question. You don't just be like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? On that side of the desk. So you're going after my job.
What if I still want to be here in 5 years?
Start writing it down, like, that type of thing.
That's where you start writing 110 on the top of their.
Yeah. Bobby Hirschman says, Ray, I'll send you a picture of our inventory tomorrow, and our sales have not stopped since the COVID. If anything, it's gotten crazy. No, Bobby, I agree. I mean, we're still doing well in our industry based on what I said. What we're dealing with, and I don't know if you are out in that cigar world out there, you're three shops, right? I think he's got three.
At least
shops
two.
Out there.
There's at least two.
But it's one of those things that, it's just spreading the wealth of the inventory that is nationwide.
Yeah.
So we were able to get stuff. We just got an order in from a company that was actually placed in December of 2021. It's August. So these are those things that it's not necessarily that we don't have things to sell. It's literally, too, he says, it's literally the fact that it's like, we could possibly sell more, because they're not looking at the fact that there's like 600 to 700 different options necessarily in a shop like ours. They're looking for something. People are now coming in. What do you have rare? Well, these are the conversations we have with people when we talk about our industry, is that, yeah, we don't, on a good weekday, we have 100 plus like customers. And we also have a lot of out-of-towners. So when you come in, you're like, what opus do you have? What ligas do you have? Do you have the Andalusian Bull? No, we did, but we sold through them already. Oh, well, my shop at home has them. And it's like, oh, well, that's
Go
great.
buy them there.
Well,
Yeah,
no.
charging twice retail.
No. It's the fact that it's like, oh, well, that's great. Well, where are you at? And they tell you, and you're like, it's great. It sounds like a great destination shop, and you guys do great business. They have it regularly in stock. And then they ask you, yes, what do you guys sell them for? And you tell them, and they're like, oh, man, that's like half the price of what we sell them for. I'm like, so you just gave me two parts of the equation on why they're still sitting there. And this is your regular shop. You're not buying them there. You're coming into a random shop that you've never been to before, and you're asking if you have them. I don't understand where is the disconnect here? You know what I mean? Like, we were talking about the Undercrown that we were smoking, the Sungrown. Liga Privadas and stuff, they have been very small produced right now. So
Yeah.
even when our rep, who's going to be here tomorrow night for the event, is saying, he's got, well, I get my allocation for the month and I have like 9 boxes of Liga 9 Toro for 70 some accounts.
Yeah.
What do you do? I mean, like, again, when we're getting back orders in that we've placed, almost a year prior, we're going to be able to sell you something, but it's there again, when we talk about moving parts, there's a lot of the business side of it with some of this stuff that, yes, there are cigars to be smoked out there, but it's not just necessarily, the people that couldn't keep up in the beginning of the pandemic, they're now getting product out. The people that had shit in stock for the year and a half of the pandemic, now they're finally running out because they had stuff, and their stuff now is being loved by everyone because that's what people do.
Well, there was a customer that came in Tinder Box 2 weekends ago, and he was looking for a very specific cigar. And not only is that blend rare, but so is that one size that he likes. And he came in on a Sunday when I was working. I was like, yeah, we're waiting on those cigars, and we take whatever size they send us, basically. We used to get a lot more of them. Now they're a little harder to get. And then he comes in the next week, and as soon as he walks the door, I'm like, we haven't gotten it in. And he goes, what do you mean you haven't gotten that cigar in? And I mentioned it to you, and you're like, we can't just order the cigar and it magically show up the next day.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
No, but that's the perception, right? So, getting back on that go to the business side of it. It's like, so yeah, I mean, Bobby Hirschman, glad to have you on, man. He FaceTimed me the other night. So good to see him and talk to him. He was having a good time.
Always.
Yeah. But it's one of those things that again, when I say there's a lot of moving parts, it's not just the manufacturers, it's everything that goes into manufacturing the product, that goes into the business side of it, is that you try to do your best, but at the same time, you have to watch your cash flow. You have to do all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about staying the course on that side of things, it's the same. Like, if all of a sudden from, say, since we're talking about in part 2 here, this isn't necessarily about I won't say the company, a shop like ours, Tinder Box at Easton, Brian and the shop, we have from one particular company, let's call it 100. It's I think a little over that at this point.
Yep.
When you factor in the bundle stuff we order,
I know you're
probably 150 different bundles and boxes on back order, with no real information on when they're coming in.
Yeah.
So now you tell no to customers. We don't have that. But we have all this stuff. No, I wanted that. We have a very good seller that's on the lower end price point, $4 to $5, $4 to $6, and people buy the 20. We don't have them.
Yeah.
Well, when are you getting them in? Well, so we have them. Things like little things, like we have like these accessory sales. I'm not even talking about accessories literally. I'm saying like these side sales, like the cigarettes, like Dunhills. No one has them, but we have cigarette smokers that come into our shop because we're the only one in town that they can get them at. And now we haven't had them for 3 to 4 weeks. And they're like, well, when are you getting them in? We've ordered them. We've got them on order. It's been 3 to 4 weeks. We're trying to get them in.
Yeah.
It's again, you want to keep people happy. And again, talking about staying the course, you want to make sure the business is staying afloat, that you don't piss people off. You don't want to upset people in your life. You want to do that. But at a certain point, you got to be able to, like, I guess, you don't want to necessarily, I'm not even talking about like sweating the small stuff or shaking that stuff. That is sometimes smaller stuff, but you still want to stay the course and keep them happy in some regard, and realize that the integrity of your reputation will at least fulfill a little bit of their comfort when they're dealing with things that they want in life.
Now, when I asked you about that 5-year question, so I actually had one job interview years ago. They asked me that question, and My answer to that question is why I didn't get that job, because my answer to the, where do you want to be in 5 years? Not where do you see yourself, but where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
My answer to that question did not involve that company. Because
what was the answer?
I at that time, because I had recently gotten out of the cigar industry, I wanted to get back into it.
Okay.
And so I told him, yeah, if the right opportunity comes, in that industry, I would love to be able to go back to that industry. So because I said that, I didn't get that job.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's literally like you meet a girl on a date or whatever, and it's like, it's like, what do you see in life? What do you see your romantic or your dating life going in 5 years? Well, I hope this can be a bridge to finding someone that I'm really happy with.
Yeah, way wrong answer.
I mean, you got to at least, play the game a little bit when it comes to the career. Not necessarily condoning playing the game when it comes to dating. Be honest, that's like we're talking about two different arenas here. But yeah, if someone asks you that, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't say that.
I learned from that.
Jesus,
I learned from that. So now, when I get asked that question, because there have been a couple jobs I've interviewed for where they have asked me that question. And so one of the last jobs within my company that I interviewed for, when they asked me, it was a position where I'd gone through 4 managers in 4 years, and I was applying to be that manager position. And so when they asked me, where do you want to be in 5 years? I told them, well, hopefully still doing this, because there'd always been so much turnover in that position, because people looked at it as just, a rung in the ladder to the next position.
Yeah.
There was never really any stability in that management position. So I told them, I'm interviewing for this job because I want this job. And hopefully in 5 years, I still want the job. Hopefully I'm still doing this and provide some stability to this position that hasn't been there, for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And, and that was something I said in a recent interview as well, that was outside the company. Is hopefully I'm still doing
here because people might be listening.
Hopefully I'm still doing it. Because it gives them some sense of relief to know that they're not going to have to interview and hire someone for that position every 2 years.
Yeah, again, if you're in, all right, real quick, on that type of thing, I'll tell you this: you can be as honest as you want, and if they don't like your answer, then maybe it's not the right position for you. But I will say this: is that the answer, in my opinion, should typically involve some key points there. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Talk about staying the course. They could ask you, where do you see yourself? The next 20 years, right? Depending on where you're at in your career. But it shouldn't involve success by the parameters that are been given to me. It should involve growth in that position. And if there are other opportunities that are presented that I can qualify for, I hope I'd be considered to expand that growth. And I just hope it, by the time that I've put in my time with this company, that the direction of my career has been a success for both myself and the company that I'm applying for right now, that I've worked for. I know that careers can take different turns. You talk about that, right? So it's all about prettying it up, right? It's I understand that sometimes that if there aren't opportunities, I hope that I can maximize the efforts of both myself and the company, so that if another opportunity does arise in the company or elsewhere, that we've all benefited from what I've done for this company. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to do so. It's a little bit political. It's a little bit smoke up the skirt type thing. But that's exactly what I'm going to, where do I see myself in 5 years? I've got a roof over my head. I'm not starving. I have benefits. Hopefully, that's the answer there, is that my life has been a very good progressive 5 years. And if I'm working for this company, or whatever you do, is that I'm better off and everyone around me is better off that I've been able to been given this opportunity. Lighting up the Monte Cristo Spado Oscuro there.
Yeah. Well, like, last year when I interviewed for my current position, at the time I was in a position that I'd been in for 6 years. And the reason I was interviewing for another position was it was two parts. One, I saw it as a step up. It was a little bit more money, not a lot. It was moving departments. But also there was a need in that department for more people because of the growth that our company had been going through and some of the shortcomings of that department because, there was a lot of turnover in that department. There was a lot of complaints that things weren't getting done in a timely manner. So I wanted to be able to move my knowledge and expertise, from the position I was in into that department that I have now. And energy industry has gone through quite a bit of turmoil over the last 2 years. Energy prices change so drastically from day to day, to the point where sometimes we have to actually stop pricing deals because of what's going on in the market. We have to put out new pricing curves, and the prices just shoot up because of what's going on in the world and how it affects our industry. But sometimes there hasn't been, goals from the sales side hit, but yet our department is still busy because, the hundreds of thousands of customers that we have, we still have to provide service to them. So our department, keeps growing, and we've brought on new people, and right now, our team is probably the biggest it's been in years, probably since in the history of this division of the company. This department's probably the biggest it's ever been.
Okay,
because we need that, and and hopefully, in the future we still need that big of a team.
Okay,
because if we still need as big a team as we have now, or even bigger, that means the company's doing well.
Sure. Well, going back to the main thing, it's those shifts we were talking about, right? So we've talked about the career thing. You brought up, it's a great question, great topic. Is the where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, let's apply that a little bit further to other things. So, Sean, you were talking about it a little bit. And I think a lot of people identify with that. I know I have. So say let's do your home life first, right? So your career is going well. You're stressed out. It's hitting some rocky waters. So this is one of those, like, kind of like the domino effect also, where it's like you're doing well in this area, right? So, but there's sacrifice in these other areas, right? You look at these things where, and let's stick with the major three here, right? I'm going to include mental health in the whole health and fitness and mental health boat ship. Then you have your career ship, and then you have your home life ship. And that home life is probably the most important, but depending on what your home life consists of, it can be a significant other, it can be kids, it can be your wife or husband, it can be your parents, your immediate family, it can be your friends or your social groups, right? That's all in that ship, in my opinion, right? So what I kind of want to introduce to the audience out there, Ray and everyone else, and Sean and Nate, I know we've all had examples of this in our life, but there's some times where when you have, most of the time, when you're having success, maybe in one, there's some sacrifices you made that you're changing your focus or what you're really working on. That, again, with those three ships trying to get to the same course, same destination, that one is going to start dealing with rockier waters. It's going to be one of those things where you're doing really well on you. Now you've turned it back on you, but you had to, because to Sean's point earlier, when you let your health go a little bit, now all of a sudden your mental health, your emotions and everything else, your career boat or ship is affected. I assume your relationship or your home life, let's call that your home life, or your social, I don't know what we would call it, home life, social ship is now dealing with it. But this boat is fucking just pulling away, man. You're this thing like full blow, wind in the sails, and it's just like we got this, and all of a sudden you're realizing that these other ships are you look back and you're like, gee, oh God, that one might not make it. It hit the iceberg. It hit whatever. Like, again, I'm trying not to go too deep in this metaphor or this analogy. I just think that this is something that is really easy to kind of equate these types of things to.
Yeah, when I was struggling with the depression and the, not being unhealthy, that definitely affected my home life, because usually it was like, work was stressful. And then when I was done with working, I wasn't connected with my family. I would usually get off the computer and go downstairs and watch TV.
Why?
Because I just wanted to escape. I didn't have any motivation to do anything else other than just go watch TV. Even though there was probably shit I should have been doing around the house or spending time with Teresa or Molly. I didn't. I just had no motivation. Why
were you in that state?
Depression. I mean, that was along with the depression, so I didn't want to.
What were you depressed about, if you don't mind sharing? Because I think this is what I'm talking about, is that, sometimes it's like you realize one out of the three ships is doing really well, and then all of a sudden you start, I guess, opening up your senses to the other ones. You're like,
yeah,
why is that? Why is this person in my life, your boss, you, significant other, friends, why are they not including me? Why are they saying that stuff to me?
Yeah, Teresa's called me out a lot. I mean, it got to a point where we had to sit down and talk, because the way I was going with, I mean, she knew I was depressed and I was fighting depression. I was seeing a counselor, I was taking the right steps, but I still wasn't doing well. We went on vacation back in the spring, went to LA and San Francisco, and there a couple of times we had big fights. And I didn't want anything. I said some fucked up shit, and I just was not in a good mood a lot of the time. And even though I was kind of doing better, I still wasn't.
So now I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize for this. The ships are starting to like run into each other.
Yeah. And
ships getting deep.
When I
saw that coming.
And they left a week early, and I went to work in San Diego. When I got back, I felt a little more refreshed to kind of like decompress, just get away from everybody and then get back and then come home. And I felt kind of refreshed. And she saw that, and she was like, I'm glad you are, because I was going to have a serious talk with you if you hadn't been. That's when I got home. So that kind of woke me up to.
Sounds like rightfully so, possibly.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. 110%. Teresa had every right to call me out on it. And, the reason I was depressed, I don't know. Looking back, I just wasn't happy with who I was. The way, this health, like it's been so long. It's just, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was so deep, though. It was like, it's almost past, like there was a certain reason. It was just, I was so in it. It was just hard to.
Now you're just, again, sticking with that, is you're just keeping enough water out of the boat to keep it afloat.
Right. And
at some point, to your comment, it's at some point you're just like, well, I'm just going to go down with the ship. And
yeah, I was.
I mean, seriously.
Yep.
I mean, but we get that way. I mean, I'm not necessarily the extreme of what you're talking about, but sometimes that's like your career. I'm just gonna skate through. I got whatever. I got, any more 15 years to retirement is a nice thing to say, that you have that ability. But I mean, your career, I'm just gonna go to work. It pays the bills. I'm just gonna keep eating certain ways and not exercising, because I mean, I'm not dead yet. I'm doing okay. But you realize that
going on cruise control.
Well, your cruise control, but now your boat is flooded. I mean, it's moving at a very handicapped rate at that point, right? I mean, you got these things that you're just allowing to flood your whole boat.
Yeah. When I was back, I started eating better and started on that track. I was starting to each day, and now more than ever being more connected with them. Teresa and I as a couple, it's been that's the part of the ship that I'm worried that I need to get back more focused on, because of just the fact that I've been focusing so much on trying to eat right and work out and stay on that path, that I sometimes overlook our relationship. Like, we haven't been on a date in a while. We haven't had time to sit down and talk to each other because she works, I work. We're always doing something with Molly or something, and we got to find that time for us, and we haven't. And I think that is the ship that needs adjusted.
Got a lot of, that whole thing. You got a lot of balls in the air. You got
Yeah.
a lot of those plates trying to keep spinning type thing. It's all that stuff. I mean, it's constant work. I mean, it's not easy. But it's interesting to hear you say that now versus earlier, when you're saying how you were correcting those things and everything started clicking a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the work's over. I mean, that's one of those things. Not trying to focus necessarily just on Sean, because I feel like a lot of people might identify with this, is that you got to realize that you have to communicate. You have to, we talk about a lot on the part 2, right? Start with yourself first. So if your health, whatever it be, fitness, mental, whatever, if that boat is sinking, then everything is fucked, in my opinion.
Yeah, it starts
because
with you.
you're basically taking the sacrifice and everything.
I think it starts with you. And
well, yeah, you get that boat floating, but now you have to realize that you can take a similar approach to this stuff, right? If you start hearing that, say, your job is now coming back on you, and realizing that you're not putting as much commitment into that, if your home life boat is also doing the same, or you more likely you can work on, put some effort into realizing if they are feeling fulfilled, your job, your employer, your significant other, and your family and your friends, right? Not necessarily making other people happy, but it is in my opinion, a losing battle if you are trying to make other people happy and then you suffer.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you take it to the extreme and all you're doing is worrying about, well, fuck everyone else, I need to make sure that I'm good, you're sending a clear message.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take the attitude of, in a sense, in one moment, fuck everything else, not everyone, but fuck everything else, I need to get myself right. The people that care about you, whether it be the employer or your home life, they will, if you communicate that to a point, this is the day and age we're at. I'm not saying you have to go into the office crying or anything like that. If that's where you're at, fuck it, do it. You know what I mean? You go to your significant other and just say, be honest, I'm struggling. If you have the will, you have the want that I'm at this point, I want to make it better because of this. Or if I see that they're struggling, you can do your part to make your expectations known to the other boats, that I want to make sure that everyone stays afloat and has those clear paths.
Yep.
The outside factors we can talk about, because sometimes it does, like, you make yourself clear, you turn a corner. Now all of a sudden the other party involved they're dealing with their own 3 ships, right? So this is something that hopefully you have that base you have. Now all of a sudden, I want to bring this in because I don't know if you guys think about this a whole lot, but it's when we're talking right now, like Sean, Nate, myself, Ray, I saw a couple other people out there, Bobby Hirschman's out there, Sean's out there, Sean Anderson. Your 3 boats are only, and I love how these metaphors in my mind, you guys probably hate this shit, but
just texted me. She goes, "When did Steve get so nautical?"
I don't know shit about sailing. The issue is that your 3 boats are part of a massive fleet. So you mentioned your wife. She has her 3 boats. Shit, now there's 6. Your company that you work for, they have a shit ton of 3 boats because of how many employees you have. Yeah. So if everyone's got these 3 boats we're talking about tonight, and say your company has 100 employees, shit, there's 300 boats in the water. God damn. And now there's these offs, like there's thousands, millions of boats in this path, and they're all maybe going to a similar path, but their destinations are just spread out. And we're supposed to make that work. Does that make sense to everyone out there? That we're trying to make sure that no one fucking sinks and that we all get to where we're going. And some of the boats are supposed to end up at the same place, but we're all different. So that destination's here. Well, your career destination is here, and you're supposed to squeeze in 300 boats because you have 100 employees in between there. But all of a sudden, they've got their 3 boats of their personal health and their relationship thing, and they're cruising alongside of that. And you're like, fuck, the harbor's not big enough for everyone.
I want to meet the admiral in charge of that fleet.
Yeah. He was sailing the Titanic.
Oh.
No, I'm just saying when I say there's a lot of moving parts to something, I don't want people to take that lightly, is that you have to realize that there are things that are out of your control. I love the fact that as long as you start in like on your personal boat, because that's where we all start, right? You know, we have one boat. Now all of a sudden you meet more people, you start a career. Now you have your 2 other boats in your fleet, but you're trying to work with everything extended off of that. This is not easy. So I think when you're trying to stay the course, you take a left turn, you're going to run into another boat. It could be your own. And that's what we're talking about. I'm just saying that it's nice to have this perception or this perspective, more importantly, that you are working with a lot of factors. So you have to like, in my opinion, it's necessary to really focus on your 3 boats and then branch off of that. What's important? If your personal health boat is sinking, that's where you need to make sure you bail out the water as quickly as possible and address the issues that are happening on that boat. Then you can go to your home life boat. And then hopefully the career boat is sailing along with you with all the moving parts that they have. They are aligned with your destination. Your course is that it aligns with that course of where you want yourself to be and everyone involved with you. But if you can't get your own boat in order, then you're going to have an issue. But I do think that I'm not trying to get too big picture, because I think it's really important to work on your 3 boats.
Yep.
But I do think that, you know, what you're talking about with your home life boat, it's really good that you're addressing it, because I don't think a lot of people do that. They focus on the career boat, their personal boat, and then this boat starts just dealing with rocky waters and storms and all that shit. And then if that boat sinks, if it deals with something that you just can't help them out anymore, you can stay your life course, but don't make it because of ignorance or neglection. You can't neglect one of your 3 boats.
So that was a concern years ago when I took the job as a cigar rep. That was my wife's concern, because, you know, for me, that was a career boat that I wanted to be in. It made me happy, you know, doing that job. My wife was concerned with me being on the road so much that it would have a negative impact on our relationship, on our home life. You know, so like what you were just talking about, you know, my career boat and my personal, you know, mental health boat, like those are just steaming along full bore. But the marriage boat's kind of lagging behind a little bit. That's what her concern was going to be. And she didn't tell me when I initially took that job, but she was going to give me 6 months. And, you know, if our home life, if our marriage was negatively affected by that career, then she wanted me to get off that boat. Now, thankfully,
yes, Ray, we're all on the boats here.
Thankfully, because she saw, how happy I was and how much I enjoyed doing it, like she was on board. And initially when I would come home for the weekends, like I'd want to spend Saturday hanging out at a cigar shop. So like Tinder Box was one of those shops that almost every Saturday I was hanging out in. But then, I had to come to a realization, I only have 2 days a week that I get to spend with my wife, not doing my job. And I'm really only getting paid for 5 days work. Why am I doing a 6-day work I'm not getting paid for? Spend those 2 days making sure everything's good at home.
Mhm.
And that's one of those things that I had to make a little bit of change of what I was doing on the weekends. And that still happens to this day. After we moved, having the back patio that we do and everything, it's real tempting for me to spend every night that I, not at the shop or not here doing the podcast. It's very easy to spend those other nights like on the back patio, just sitting out there, having pours of whiskey, drinking cigar or smoking cigars. So I have to consciously make the choice and effort. Like, okay, I may go out and have a cigar, but then after that, go inside and spend time with the wife because,
Or include her somehow.
so a lot of times she'll sit out there with me.
Yeah.
And so, we'll sit out there, we'll talk, and we'll, just enjoy the evening, make a fire, still spend that time together. But then like there've been a few nights recently where, by the time she got home, I was already out on the back patio having a cigar, and like I would finish that cigar and be like, hey, you want to go inside and, watch TV together? Not just me watch my stuff, you watch your stuff in a different room.
Right.
Like, no, let's find something we both enjoy watching or want to watch, and let's sit down and watch it together. And so I learned that from that career change, how important it was to not just do everything I wanted to do all the time. Spend some time with her too. Do some stuff she wants to do.
Seems
because
like
that
common
makes
sense, but people deal with that all the
Yeah.
time.
But that makes the boat a little bit stronger. And again, it aligns the whole fleet together. Instead of me taking my fleet where I want to go and you just go do whatever you want. No, we're all heading towards the same direction together. It makes it a lot easier to control all the boats.
I love the fact this boat analogy worked out for you guys, because I did not think about it until about an hour ago. So what do we do? What do we do? How do we stay the course? Right. So let's work towards an ending here. And the course of this part 2 here is, we've got some listeners out there live right now, and I know that a lot of people deal with a lot of these issues. Bobby Hirschman says, "Happy wife, happy life." Absolutely. Sometimes it takes sometimes a moment of clarity that you realize that you aren't giving enough attention to one of these boats in life, right? It does.
Or what Sean talked about, sometimes it takes your significant other to actually bring it up and be like, hey, we're not in this together. Like, you're sailing off without me.
Well, that's my point, right? Sometimes it takes an employer. Sometimes it takes looking in the mirror on your personal health boat. It takes waking up and not feeling like yourself, or, sometimes to the extreme, like what Sean was talking about. Sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, my God, like I'm not who I want to be health-wise. Tired all the time. My clothes don't fit anymore. I don't have much drive. These are those things that there's issues on all of these different boats that you're dealing with, right? So how do you stay the course? What is, I'm not saying there is one answer, but I mean, what are the goals? Bobby Hirschman says it takes time and passion. Never lose that passion. So what is this? I mean, how do you stay the course? Because we talk about, like, the destination can change a little bit. Sometimes, what you think, again, this is an age thing, right? It's like when you're in your 20s or whatever, you think you want to be this when you're 40 or 50 or 60 or what, retired or on your deathbed. Chances are that course has changed by the time, if you have the opportunity to get to that point. I'll tell you that right now. You're not with the girl you want. You don't have the job you want. You have hopefully progressed to something that is a better suit for those 3 boats. But it doesn't mean that you just run away every time you hit rocky waters and you take a sharp left turn. You have to steer the boat, all 3 of them. And that's a big task. So how do you do that? Go ahead.
I've said this before in a lot of things. And I mean, obviously you have to kind of plan ahead and look at, make those goals that you want to set out and do. But once that's kind of set in place, a lot of it's being in the present. A lot of it's like taking like one day at a time, like focus on that day. Don't let things that necessarily, down the road that you're worried that could affect an outcome. Don't make that the end all be all, or don't focus on that. Focus on the task you're doing at hand. Knowing I'm going to get up and I'm going to, have food kind of thought, for me, I'm like, I know what I'm going to have to eat when I get up. I'm going to have kind of things planned for the week. But then when it's all set in place, it's like, let's attack the day, attack each day, and things that you need to work on, that needs to be thought out as well. And then again, because if you look too much into the future, you're going to lose focus of what you're actually doing. You can dwell on the past, I say, in a sense, to learn from the mistakes that you made, but don't dwell on the past, the mistakes you made. Learn from them and move forward. Have a short-term memory when it comes to that. Make that, you fucked up, whatever, but all you have now is what's in front of you and what you have moving forward.
Yeah, I think there's another aspect of what you're saying there, Sean, is that, if you address, right, you take the little things, that's fine. But if you overcorrect, now all of a sudden you're sabotaging the long-term goal because you're reacting, but it's like hyper reacting. Emotions involved, and it's like, oh, this is wrong. We need to take a big turn here. And so the next day you're just like, everything's changed. No, it's not. You tried to compensate, but you overcompensated. You oversteered. And so now all of a sudden you oversteer, and now you find yourself in a new obstacle because you didn't actually address the issue. You just reacted to it. And if you react to something like that with some of these, the 3 big boats and 3 aspects of your life, if you react to it without much thought and, again, steering, calculating, going through this process of what is the big issue and why is this happening in this aspect of my life? Why is this person feeling this way? Why am I feeling this way? And actually addressing the issues, you just react and you just start steering the boat recklessly. It's a very dangerous situation to be in.
That's something I'm very good at, unfortunately. Like I get very, like, that's one of the things I need to work on too, is if my wife can set me off by doing certain things, I'm like, fuck it, we'll just do this, kind of that. We'll do whatever you want, do it this way. We'll just do it that way. And it's a knee-jerk reaction. And all it does is just escalate the situation to a higher level. And then it becomes a fight. Whereas again, I'm trying to look at things now like I do with work. Shit's going to go south. It's not about, you got to fix the problems, but it's not a knee jerk. You got to analyze it. You got to sit back and think. A lot of times if Teresa and I get too heated and we start arguing, I'm like, listen, I don't want to say anything I'm going to regret later. Just let me calm down for a little bit so we can talk about this more when we're a little more calm instead of emotional.
Yeah.
That way. And usually we do, and it works itself out because we took the emotion out of the equation and became more, this is how I feel. This is how I feel. All right, let's come to a solution to work on that.
What you find with that type of attitude, in my opinion, is that can sometimes be a shorter time period after it happens several times. You start learning how to navigate through the course. You navigate the waters. You navigate the situations. You learn from the experience and how to do it together.
So this is one thing that I have a problem with, and I still do. And I've been married to Teresa for a long time. When she starts getting pissed off or losing her shit, my I don't know if it's anxiety or my emotions or my blood starts to boil, and it's almost like I start getting pissed off because she's pissed off. It's like, and then I become more. She sees it in me, and then it just creates this fucking shit show. Whereas if I were just to say, this is something she's dealing with, it has nothing to do with me, I can maybe offer to help the situation or just listen, which I've been told a million times, and not try to fix it. But all guys can relate to that. I got to be able to separate myself from that. If she's losing her shit and she's pissed about something, listen, nod, offer help, but don't bring that emotion that you have up to what she's dealing with. It's going to make it worse. But it's something
don't throw gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, and that's something I still got to work on. It's been 20 plus fucking years, still dealing with it. So I take deep breaths. I kind of, when the dogs see it, they start they go in another room and hide. And usually I just go with the dogs and sit with them and let her lose her shit.
You hide.
Yeah, just because I don't want to
run away.
I just don't want to get, overreact with her and then make it worse. I just let her do her thing and step away.
Well, that kind of goes to what you're talking about, that knee-jerk reaction. Like sometimes if you just react instead of actually analyzing and making a calculated maneuver, sometimes that reaction, just put yourself in choppier waters.
Yep.
It makes the situation a little bit worse.
Yep.
Because you were just reacting instead of actually seeing further down, like, all right, if I react, where's this going to go?
Yeah.
Probably not somewhere we want to be.
Yeah.
So what do I need to do in order to get through the situation and get to calmer waters?
Yep.
Yeah. I'll tonight I'm going to start with my closing remarks and let you guys kind of go from there. And Sean, be a part of this. I'm glad you didn't come on the podcast because you're not really contributing a whole lot.
We offered.
We did. Look at this guy walking in with a six-pack.
Who literally had to duck to get underneath the garage door.
So what I'll say to that, right? So there is something that sometimes you do need to react, okay? That you will have to react, Sean, and everyone out there. You're going to have to react. Sometimes something happens. If you have that chair right there, if you have a co-captain, if you're dealing with some other parties there, sometimes you have to react together. But again, I think this is something that as long as you keep it open to the fact that you have a course, you have an agreed upon destination, that this is what you want in life. You don't let the obstacles necessarily take control of the situation. So with what you're saying there is and Nate, combining with that, is that you want to have that calculated type of response, but there are going to be times where you're going to be in the heat of it, and walking away may not be the best response for that other person, because now all of a sudden you've literally walked away from that storm that's coming, and you're like, all right, I'm out. I'll be underneath the cabin. I'll come back up when you've got it under control. You've just abandoned that person, the other party, the other ship. You got to make sure that you can respond to this. This is why I'm doing my closing remarks. I know he's going to respond. You might too. You can. But I think with staying the course, you have to remember the long term. There's going to be a change in the destination. You don't know necessarily where you want to be, but you're figuring out constantly, and having those three ships going at the same time, you got to make sure that there's no water that's flooding any of them. And you really do, in my opinion, focus on your personal boat, your personal health boat. But sometimes you don't even see it, and the other parties will see it, and they're trying to help you out. Make sure that you have that open mind to do that, or get to that point where you can do that. And you see that again, when I was going into the whole thing where it's like your three boats, then you have your company has all the boats, and then you have your significant other that they have their three boats. Now you do have this whole fleet going on right now that you're hoping that who knows necessarily where you're going to end up, but you do it in a way that you make it there, and that you make it there in a healthy manner, and everyone hopefully is happy with where you finally land.
But hopefully you land.
Hopefully you land. Go ahead, Sean.
Just comment on what you just said. Yeah, you're right. There are times where, you got to be there for that significant other, and I kind of can read the room when it comes to that. If it involves me or something that she's mad at me, then I'm not going to go run. I'll let her do her thing. But even if she's pissed at me and she goes off of me and she's losing her shit or going off, that's something where I do my best not to snap back, because I know that's going to make it worse. And she
turns the wheel right. You're like, nope, left.
Yeah, that's bad news.
Yeah.
That's why I come to your house and sleep on the couch for a night. So
you've never slept on my couch.
I know. You never know. One of these days.
The listeners don't know that. Got a guest room.
I could steer the boat down Rangel and come dock at your house if you want me to.
Jesus Christ.
It's a short walk.
Yeah.
Off a long pier.
So, but I think that if the closing remarks, though, I think, like I said, I mentioned earlier, kind of goes with what I said earlier. It's like, you set your goals, focus on yourself first, get yourself right. Whatever you need to do to plan for at least a week out and be prepared. Then take that one day at a time. Focused, crush that day. A lot of people say, I'm going to crush today. It's like, say whatever you want, but it's like, focus on that day. Obviously, you're going to have obstacles throughout the day. It's how you respond. And if it's a mistake, it's how you learn from it. But once you've made that mistake, or once things have happened and you figured out how to respond and you figured out how to fix it and how you learn from it, then it's just, you're back on course now, because you learned something to prevent it from happening again. If it happens again, refer back to when it happened before and try to do better. As far as like with the family and everything, or your businesses, same thing. It's you, if you see there's things that are, if you get too focused on yourself, you don't focus too much on your family or your work, then that's something you got to take a step back to and look and see, well, how's that looking? Have I done anything with my wife? Have we been on, when's the last time we went on a date? When's the last time we sat down and talked without any distractions? And when's the last time I got to work and logged on an hour early and knocked a bunch of shit out and made, went above and beyond and stuff like that. So there's things that can be done on all sides of the coin. But again, I think just sometimes it can get overwhelming, because there's like, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to make sure this is good. Again, to me, that's looking too far into the future and worrying about things that could or could not happen. Again, staying that course, focusing on the now, and that's what I got.
Yeah, but the thing, so again, with your scenario right there, is that, again, this is kind of what I'm trying to really drive home here, is that when you're dealing with your 3 boats, right? You keep talking about your wife and the home life side of it. She shares that boat. Mm-hmm. So there's a way that you can address that part of it, and hopefully you got to take in that consideration when you're focused on yourself. She's got the other 2 boats, career, her health, and all that stuff, and all this. So if you're neglecting that one, then all of a sudden she's on that by herself. Yeah. But if you try to help out, now all of a sudden you got yours. Like, hopefully you can work on your own personal one, your health boat, and then you have that home life boat. Well, now you're sharing duty there, and hopefully you can keep that career one going. Well, you do that. Now you have a shared boat. Now there's not 6, there's 5, right? So
you beat me to it. Nice job.
It's my goddamn metaphor. But I'm saying, like, you can put that effort into those things, and you realize that it can have some resounding impact.
Yeah.
On then the other 2 boats, because they're not in it by themselves.
Case in point, there's a good situation, because there's a lot of times where Trace ends up doing a lot more than I do around the house. And sometimes, I do my share, but I think she does more, and I just don't even see it, because again, I'm focusing on my boat. So on Sunday, she was like, can you start helping me get up in the mornings, help Molly get up to school and help with the dogs? And just things that she has to do by herself every morning while she's trying to work. So that's something I completely overlooked. But she came to me in a way of being like, you need to fucking get up. And she didn't come to me in a way and say, you need to fucking get up and help me.
She did or
hey,
not?
She did not. She was like, hey, would you mind getting up in the mornings and help me with this? I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm worried about I'm going to miss something at work. Absolutely. So now every morning I'm up at 6 a.m. Even though I have to work till 10, I'm up at 6 a.m. making sure shit's taken care of. So she has less to worry about and focus on her work. So right then and there is a good adjustment that we made. And I can see her being a lot happier now.
Good.
I can see the relief in her eyes. And I can see it long-term making a big positive adjustment.
I love it. Nate?
So I really like your, the nautical analogy you've been bringing into this for staying the course. I like it.
Huge
Steve.
sailor.
We'll get him a captain's hat or something for Halloween.
You don't have to. Seriously, you don't have to. Nah, you don't need it. I'm not wearing it.
But,
Not wearing it. I don't wear hats.
Oh, come on. I dressed up as you for Halloween one year.
Didn't mean you. Had to do that.
But something I'd written down earlier that I was going to use for my closing remarks, this analogy of, the ships is steering the boat versus letting the winds steer you.
Okay.
If you're always letting the winds drive you, you're not in control. You're passive. You're going to go wherever they go. You're going to land somewhere that may be completely off course of where you wanted to go.
Right.
When you actually focus on steering your own ship, you have control, but there's also a lot of effort that goes into that in order to make sure you land where you want to land.
Yeah, battling those outside factors of the winds.
But I think some people, it's too easy or comfortable to be passive and just go with the flow, however it takes them. I think the harder thing is to actually have full control of where they're going, the direction they're going, because they actually have to sometimes go against, the winds, the water, whatever's the outside factors are. They may have to go against that. For some people, that's easier said than done.
Yeah, I think that, if I may,
Yes.
do what people do with me on my closing remarks all the time, is the fact that if you let the course start taking care of itself, you will wake up at one point and realize that's not the course you wanted to be on, and all of a sudden you want to abandon ship.
And if you let that happen,
career-wise, personal relationship, health-wise,
if you let that happen too long,
Yeah.
you're going to be in a position where it is too difficult or too drastic to actually, it's too late to actually change the direction of where you're going. You may be so many thousands of miles off course that you don't have enough seed left to get where you wanted to go. And you end up settling for where you end up. And sometimes when you end up settling where you end up, a lot of times you're not truly happy being where you are.
I'll put Bobby Hirschman's comment out there. There's silver ships, there's gold ships. There's no ship like friendship. It's a goddamn Hallmark card that I think is very relevant. Do you want the mic?
Sure.
All right, we got.
So
get the mic over to the other Nate.
Someone that my wife listens to constantly. The only ships that don't sail are partnerships. But that's in business.
The only thing I was going to say based on what you just said.
A little closer there.
The only thing I was going to say based on what you just said is a more accurate nautical term would be stay true. And
Stay true.
Stay true to your
How do you know
course.
about nautical terms?
I'm going to get that tattooed on my feet. That's the other part of the north-facing compass of the fleur-de-lis that I have tattooed on my feet. So I have done some research into this.
I know.
But also, like, going into what you guys were just talking about, I missed a lot of this. But
welcome to the garage.
But by staying true to everything you said, like true to how you feel about what you need to do to better your life, I also feel like I'll lose that. Stay true. That nautical compass. Keep moving forward.
I think
Stay
stay
true to
true is
yourself.
very relevant to the whole topic. The topic tonight was stay the course. So I think that is absolutely that. You need to make sure that you know where you're headed.
And the other thing, like with the sailors, they always, they navigated by stars, and a lot of times they use the North Star. And why they use that? Because it was a constant in the sky.
Yep.
Everything else around it changed, but that was one constant. So sometimes you need to have a constant in your life that keeps you on track and focus on what that is. So that way, you're always steering your ship towards the correct goal.
Love that. I think that's a great way to round it out. So I will say thank you very much, everyone watching and listening. And if you guys listen to the audio after the fact, but happy Whiskey Wednesday. Thank you for listening to part 2. You know the sponsors. Check them out. Patreon.com/BourbonBS podcast. Venmo @BourbonandBS. And also for the swag, buyjack.com/BourbonandBS. Love that. Stay true. Stay the course, everyone. Hope you guys learned a lot. Thanks for the ride along with the metaphor that I came up with last minute. Cheers.
It's great how that worked out.
Always does.
It finds a way.